Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Hingham School Committee meeting of March 26th, 2018 at 7:31 p.m. And first item on our agenda is approval of minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the school committee meeting held on February 26th, 2018.
Do I have a second? Yes. Okay, any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the school committee meeting held on March 12th, 2018.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Next, questions and comments. Audience comments are always welcome as agenda items are discussed. The school committee has set aside 15 minutes for anyone that'd like to raise a question that's not on the agenda. Does anyone have anything to add? No? Thank you. Next is superintendent's report.
Thank you. Just a number of things I'd like to comment on. Hopefully it won't take a long while, but I've got very good information from Katie Roberts, the science director, the other day that one of our senior students has received quite a prestigious summer internship at Bryce Thompson Institute, which is on the campus of, not necessarily part of, but on the campus of Cornell University. And we compliment Libby Cates, who's one of the biology teachers, and his teacher, that this is a biotech internship in plant genomes and all kinds of interesting things like that. There will be a formal announcement coming from the Institute that I will share with you, but this is an exceptional opportunity for this young man. The PACE project, this is a project that we are now involved in, having to do with technology and computer science, and I'll have Jamie explain what our role is and how we were identified to be part of this project.
Yes,
And you have something in your flyer.
Yes.
You have a flyer in your packet.
Yeah, so you should have in the packet a brief explanation of the PACE partnership, which is a partnership between the Mass Association of School Superintendents as well as MassCan, which is an organization of industry leaders and nonprofit people, and as well as for-profit businesses in the city, looking to expand and ensure that all kids have access to computer science. So given our work with our rollout this year of our K through 5 computer science program, as well as our longer term vision for the integration and immersion of computer science across all of our content areas, we were approached by PACE to sort of come on board as a part of that work. And really be in a position to help guide. We'll become sort of the South Shore Regional Lighthouse District for the work, which means that as our work expands and we roll our programming out, that other districts from across the Commonwealth will come and actually see Hingham and see the work that we're doing. We've actually I just got a couple of emails from other districts in the region saying, when can we come and see? And we said, well, give us a little bit of time first. But it was a great, I think it's a great opportunity for Hingham, not only for the community, but also for our teachers to be a part of this network and really be a part of a bigger professional discussion around how do we best do this and ensure access for all kids across the state. So we were, it talks a little bit about how you'll be invited and sort of selected to participate. We were actually invited to participate. So we accepted the invitation, and I believe Dot signed the MOU between for us to be a part of that partnership.
Who are some of the other districts, do you know?
They haven't told us yet.
Oh, okay.
There's a couple that were thrown around in discussion, but none.
We'll
I'm not. Yeah, we'll let you know as soon as we know.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's exciting.
The kindergarten enrollment, I wanted to give you an update on this, partly because this is an item that has some impact a potential impact on the budget. But the official time for turning in the packets, the enrollment packets, was a week ago on Friday. And as of last Thursday, things are still coming in. So if you can see this, not very big, but we get results back by each building. And so the key is really around how many people pick up packets versus how many people turn them back in, which is the sign of the official enrollment. So the circled number there of 246, this is the total number of parents that picked up a packet. And those parents come from two pools. One pool is the number of age-eligible students that we received from Eileen McCracken based upon the census that was done in January. So the total number of age-eligible children was 203, which was a smaller number, not by a lot, but a smaller number than normally we would have in that census. Of those people so far, 203, 134 have actually picked up a packet, and 112 have returned it. So that means there are 69 families that, according to the census, still live in Hingham and have a child who would be age appropriate for kindergarten. Since we only have 134 that picked up a packet, that leaves outstanding 69 students. And this happens every year, by the way. And so what we need to do is to find where they are. Because if they're not coming here to kindergarten, could they be going to a private kindergarten? Yes, they could. Could they have suddenly moved away? We don't know. And that's a challenge every year, but particularly this year, it's a challenge because we do want to know whether any of those children would be children that parents are holding out for another year. So the other pool from which we get candidates is people who simply walk in from the street. They've seen the advertising that we do through the preschools and so on, and they simply arrive at the school door and say, my child is eligible for kindergarten. They have to show identification, age determination, and they get a packet. So of that category of people who simply walked in, there were 112. And that's not a typo, there are 212s in a row. So 112 people just came in that we didn't anticipate, we didn't have on any sort of a list. And of those, 85 have returned a packet. But that leaves 27 who haven't yet done anything. Now, we haven't yet reached that date in April where they would pay a penalty for being late. That's coming up. So that will change. But again, we need to know where are those people. Given that people pick up a packet from whichever pool we have, the total number that picked up packets is 246. And given that they picked up a packet, the likelihood is that they will return it. So when I'm projecting ahead at this time of year, I make the assumption that anyone picked up a packet will certainly turn it in, and there might be a few more people who might come and pick up a packet that they hadn't yet done. So at this point, we have 197 who picked up a packet out of the 246. And that's a gap of 49 students that we have to find out something about. At this point, we have no knowledge about retentions from the current year's class. It's early for that. Those decisions tend to be made later in the spring. And so the 197 is how many packets came back. But if you look at the 246 and you imagine for each of the buildings how many students or how many classrooms we would need, it would seem that if this doesn't change a lot, then we likely would not need the additional kindergarten class that we requested in the budget. So, so I think that's a fair likelihood. However, we have several weeks left, actually more than a month, before we get to the first week in May when we'd make a determination of how many there actually are. And I am concerned about the number of outstanding students about which we know nothing. And it would seem easy to say, well, just call them up and find out what's happening. Well, that's easier said than done, because our experience, particularly over the last several years, is that the secretaries work hard at this in the elementary schools, but they make calls and not everybody returns the call. In some cases, in the case of the A-B people, in other words, the people that were on the census and never came, we don't have any contact information for them, really. So it's going to be hard to determine. So for that reason, while I think it's hopeful that we might be able to reduce the budget by that one teacher, we're not going to know immediately, so I would not and am not recommending tonight that that's an action that we should take. But important to keep monitoring it. And at the same time, we always ask as well for any K-1 children, those families, to register at this time for grade 1, because remember, we still have somewhat of a bump up, a smaller one than ever, between K and 1. So the sooner we know about that, the sooner we have a better sense of what staffing we have. And so we had 7 families that picked up a packet for entering grade 1, and there are 3 of them that have returned that. That's of a less crucial nature, that fact, because we think that we can handle whatever number we've had in the upcoming grade 1 class. So
Dot, can I just want to clarify? So you're saying you're not recommending removing
at this
the-
time,
the incremental?
the
kindergarten?
incremental, yes.
Okay.
Because we try to keep those classes, 20 being the max, and if you look at the number of individuals, we have 57 youngsters at East School, so that might be a 3, but 3 at 19 at this time doesn't give you a lot of room for growth, but let's say that could be a 3. At Foster, we'd have to go with 4, because going with 3 means you're starting at 21 in March. That's iffy. The 50 could be 3, it wouldn't be 4, that's Plymouth River. And the South might be able to go with 4 at 19. I'm concerned that that could go from 4 to 5, however, so,
So it depends on what happens at which school?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
All right.
it does, so. So anyway, I think it's hopeful that we can reduce the budget by that amount, and that would be great, but I think it's too soon to make that definitive tonight. Okay, and moving along, just wanted to report briefly on the substitute forum. So last Tuesday morning in this room, we had another parking problem, but that was because we had 40 people who responded to our request or our invitation to come to a forum about substituting. And 3 or 4 of those were nurses, particularly short of nurse substitutes. Most of them took away an application packet, and so we'll see where it goes, but that was a very hopeful outcome, particularly after some of them had to wait quite a while to find a parking place. They came nevertheless, and they were enthusiastic, and we had, in addition to Jamie and me, we had 3 of the assistant principals, 1 from the high school and 2 from the elementary, and typically in the buildings, it's the assistant principal who is that kind of a liaison or coordination in terms of the substitute teaching. So that's a very, very good thing. You have the town warrant budget comment. There typically is a 1-page report in there. There's a selectmen's report in the town warrant, there's an advisory committee report in the town warrant, and there's a school committee report in the town warrant. So it's the same template that we've used, and Liza has reviewed it, and it has gone off to get to the printer. So, and it's really just a verbal summary of what, very much like what the letter, the original budget message that I send out at the beginning of the process is. The difference is that had imaginary numbers, and this now has the numbers that have been voted by the advisory committee in it. So it's brief. And lastly, the Snap Pizza Palooza flyer is there for your review.
bring that up.
Oh, sorry. That's the report. And this is in your packet, the warrant report.
No, can you bring up
What's
the
the
pizza?
pizza
Palooza?
palooza?
Yeah, that's what I'm
Very,
coming to
very
next.
Fourth sentence down,
Ah.
second paragraph.
Maybe it isn't here, it's supposed to be here.
Critical eyes.
I don't see it.
Basically saying that like it's
It's all right.
critical
But anyways, tomorrow evening, starts around 5.
Or Wednesday evening.
eyes.
Wednesday.
Critical of an eye, you know what I mean?
Yes, the 28th, sorry, 28th, and it starts around 5, and,
5 to 7 at the high school.
mhm.
It's a hoot.
And who doesn't like
It is,
pizza?
the brochure is in the drive.
Hmm?
The brochure is in the drive.
I can't hear you.
The brochure,
The brochure's in the drive, you said.
Oh, did she put it in the FYI part?
no, it's over a little further.
Oh.
If you're in the drive, near the end.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, she put it not where the,
Just for the folks at home.
I was
okay, for the folks at home.
You know, exactly what I was supposed to do there.
Snap fundraiser, Pizza Palooza at the high school, Wednesday. See you there. Thank you all.
Short and sweet. I enjoyed it.
Get rid of that.
That'd be greeting.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, communications. So we have first communications received by the superintendent.
Yes, I want to bring your attention, a gift that has been made to the school department, and a gift in terms of a donation that is in a fund in the treasurer's office. And it is intended to support teachers by training them, in particular, around the Holocaust. And the contribution comes from Rabbi Joseph and her husband. It's taken a while to get it set up, but the intent is that individual teachers can apply to take a trip to Washington, D.C., which can all be done in a day, I guess, and to go to that museum. And of course, we have a new
It's beautiful. The museum is beautiful.
a new course this year that social studies teacher teaches around the Holocaust. And so we are certainly appreciative of the gift. The original donation to the gift, the initial donation is in the amount of $5,000, and the account is set up so that anyone could choose to donate. Anyone that's within our hearing could choose to donate. It's easy to do. One would contact John Ferris here, send a check here, noting that it is for this particular account, and it's called the Rabbi Joseph Holocaust Studies Fund. So, check would be made out to Hingham Public Schools, come here, John would take care of getting it. But this is a great opportunity for professional development training, and we certainly thank the rabbi and her husband for this generous offer, and also for John and Andy for trying to get it all organized and going. So we're excited about that.
Great. Good opportunity.
Thank you.
Next, student communications. Emma Quilty.
I thought it was right to talk about the walkout we had last Wednesday. As many know, a month ago, hundreds of teenagers ran for their lives from the hallways and classrooms of Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School, where 17 students, staff, had been shot to death. On Wednesday, March 14th, the students and civilians of that community walked the streets sharing that they should never have to run from guns again. As well as the Parkland students, thousands of students across the United States walked out of class Wednesday to demand stricter gun laws in a historic show of political solidarity that was part tribute and part protest. On Wednesday, March 21st, the majority of the Hingham High School took a step into the snow-lined turf and cold breeze for a good cause. Although our school-wide walkout day was not on March 14th like the rest of the country's due to a snow day, leaders in our school rescheduled it, showing the importance of the event. As the clock struck 10, there was no more giggling and joking around. It was time to prove the government and NRA wrong. After everyone attending the walkout aligned on the turf, we started our 17 minutes of peaceful protest and paid tribute to the people of Parkland that died. After juniors spoke about what was happening and why we were taking a stance, sophomore Taya Coughlin read an empowering poem a witness of the shooting wrote. The poem was called MSD Shooting, My Experience, and it was by Samantha Deach, a 15-year-old witness. Valentine's Day at MSD, I go through my classes as my daily routine. The fire alarm is pulled twice today, and an announcement is made to evacuate. I approach the bottom of the stairs. I see kids running as confusion tears. I make a U-turn and head to the room. When gunshots erupt, our faces doomed. Still without knowing if it's just a drill, hiding in the closet as our nerves fill. I receive a text from my mom, "Are you okay?" That's the moment I knew that it isn't a normal birthday. Yes, indeed, I turned 15 this day. Goodbye is something to my classmates I never got to say. I lost too many friends thanks to Nicholas Cruz. Until gun policy changes, how many more do I have to lose? I sat in the closet, scared and confused, as our Second Amendment rights were being abused. No one needs an AR-15 unless it is to kill and injure over 17. 17 is far too many. As I turn on the news, with my palms all sweaty, I see my friend is missing. Jamie Gutenberg. I frantically start typing to text her. I have some hope sending, "Are you okay?" Less than 1 minute later, my hope had faded away. She had been confirmed dead. Emotions fill up as I can't feel my head. Thanks to the lack of help for a clear mental illness and an AR-15, when I go back to class, Jamie will not be seen. I saw her the morning of the shooting, not knowing this friend I would be losing. In order to cope, I got a new puppy, a Maltipoo less than 2 pounds and fluffy. We gave her a name as a tribute to MSD. She cheers everyone up. Welcome to the family, Miss C. Then several people talked about the victims who died or took their lives for others. Lastly, Molly Schwab from the junior class, a former Parkland resident, told us her story. She explained that only 5 years ago she lived in that town with those people that were stuck inside an unsafe building. Right as she heard the news, she texted her friends, and in minutes she got replies. One of her friends was locked in a closet with very little battery left on her phone. After 10 minutes of Molly trying to calm the innocent girl down, they lost touch. Is she alive? Is she out of the school? Could this have been me? All these thoughts raced through Molly's head. Fortunately, all her friends were safe, but the terror and horror that lays in their mind will never be fixed. After the message was passed on, we all returned to class in hope something this horror could never happen again. Although this event was horrific and awful, a positive lesson received from it is the new and younger people are feeling more confident to share their voices, which could end up creating a better environment within the country.
Thank you. Yeah.
So, Emma, if you could please relate to your fellow students that you represent that I personally empathize with what you guys did. I appreciate what you guys did. At the age of 21, I marched throughout the United States fighting for justice for those that couldn't have a voice. So I appreciate what you guys did. Continue doing it. You attempt to do on the 14th, it didn't work. You did it on the 21st. What took place on Saturday, the 24th, it's amazing, unprecedented. It happened throughout the world. I'll invite you to stay for the next item that we'll be talking, which is a topic on considering a vote on sending a letter to President Trump asking that he bans all assault weapons. So I invite you to stay and listen to the conversation and bring it back to your fellow students. Please, and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Emma.
And if anyone didn't see today's ledger, there were pictures of some Hingham students who were at the protest on the Common, and some quotes as well.
On that note, so thank you, Emma. That was very moving, and thank you for the poem. That was, I hadn't heard that one, so thank you very much. On other communications, we had talked about this at our last meeting. We had received the school committee members had received an email from Dover School Committee, who was initiating their own effort of collecting signatures from school committees to send a letter about guns and, to President Trump and some other national officials. Ed had some questions about the petition, and since he wasn't here last week, we wanted to bring it up again and wanted to discuss, whether we wanted to sign on to this. So I'm going to let Ed explain what he has or has not even learned of, whether we decide to participate or not. So.
Liza, thank you. Emma, thank you very much. It's sometimes difficult to take a dissenting view, so I hope that you'll listen. When this email crossed all our desks, I reached out to Liza and shared some of my experiences with her, and I could tell right away that she wasn't comfortable and didn't really know anything about it, so she asked me if I would follow through. I sent an email to both the people that were mentioned 2 times, total of 4 emails, to the people at Dover Sherburne. I went so far as to call the town hall to get the email address, and frankly, haven't heard anything. My concern on the 3 proposals is the middle proposal. And I think a little bit of background is appropriate, and I won't take too much time, but I grew up at a time and in a place that hunting was part of our lives. The superintendent will get a kick out of this. In Western New York, as you go to the southern tier on opening day of deer season, schools close because all the boys and all the girls go hunting. I earned my NRA safety hunting license when I was 14 years old. I hunted with my dad in high school. I hunted with my brother in college, and I hunted with my buddies in graduate school. I've hunted in half a dozen states across the country and in Canada, and deer, antelope, bear, birds, and so on. My concern is the devil is in the details. I absolutely support parts of this. There's no reason, and I'm coming at this from a hunter's point of view, and as far as I'm concerned, there's no hunter that would have an assault weapon hunting. It just isn't appropriate. But my concern is the second point, and when it says a ban on modifications to convert guns, to semi or fully automatic status. And there are hundreds of thousands of legitimate conservationist, legal, law-abiding families, hunters, that have a semi-automatic shotgun. I don't happen to have one because I couldn't afford it. But they're there. And I'm afraid that the way this these 3 bullet points are written, the only way we're going to, in my opinion, the only way we're going to ever get anything done on this, on the weapons, is to include rather than exclude the hunters. To me, the devil is in the detail. So for that reason, and I tried to reach out. I did reach out, and I tried to contact both the 2 people in Dover Sherburne. I'm sorry, but I have to take a step back, and I cannot support this proposal as it's written.
Oh, do you have a question?
Just for Ed.
Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, where you grew up, do they still take the day off school for hunting?
I don't know that.
Yes or no?
I will tell you, though, it'd be pretty fair to say that if they don't close the school, they have a token participation. Yeah.
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 Liza,
Yeah.
I have a statement that I'd like to read.
Okay, well, okay, go ahead. And then I'll, go ahead.
What happened in Parkland, Florida is tragic. 17 people lost their lives, and I completely understand the emotions many of us have, since I am myself a mother of 3 boys and in 3 different schools. I think all of us would agree that gun violence needs to stop and our students need to be safe. However, this statement drafted by the Dover School Committee is not going to keep our schools safe. At our last meeting, I was hoping that we would not pursue this, since personally I do not think it is in our purview. I'm not a gun expert, and I assume none of us are. But because we are continuing this conversation, I felt it is necessary to reach out to a police officer friend of mine who confirmed that this statement is full of inaccuracies. Number 1 calls for a ban on assault weapons. Which weapons exactly is this petition calling a ban on, since the term assault weapon is actually a term created by the media? If you refer to any firearm lexicon, there is no such thing as an assault weapon. Number 2, calls for a ban on all modifications to convert weapons to semi or fully automatic status. This statement shows clearly how ignorant the writer of this petition is and anyone who signs it. First of all, it is a federal felony to convert any gun to a fully automatic. And secondly, you cannot convert any gun to a semi-automatic. Number 3, introduce a background check on gun ownership. Background checks have already been introduced and exist in this country nationwide. Adding in mental health records to the NICS system would help, but there is no mention of this here. And if you're going to put a petition together, then the author of that petition should be an expert and factually correct, or your petition and yourselves will be discredited. And believe me when I say that I speak from experience when it comes to correct wording of petitions. There are so many inaccuracies mentioned in this statement that I will not put my name to it. I hereby move that if this committee pursues signing this petition, I demand that individual signatures be put to it so that it is clear this is not a unanimous decision. Secondly, if we are going to sign our names to an initiative with multiple towns, then don't you think it should be about school funding or educational reform? Lastly, if the goal here is to keep the conversation going and keep our schools safe, then let's have those conversations. Let's educate ourselves and gather the facts first. I am happy to discuss the issue of school safety because these are our kids. But signing this letter could not be further from accomplishing that.
I support parts of what you said of that when we received this, everyone received it and wanted to talk about it to everybody. But with Ed trying to follow up with the people to get clarification, and he followed up with them several times, and they didn't respond, that to me is what's happened to this. And so I'm inclined of, what you said, what's the authenticity of this? I'm in favor of safety in our schools and all the protests and everything, but this one little message, I don't think, for me, it's not appropriate for us to respond to this specific request. If we choose at some point to make some other type of statement regarding school safety, I think that's something we can explore. But this specific message, I'm not inclined to respond to either.
Yeah.
If anybody else, yeah.
I'm glad that you actually shared this with us because it came to you, it came to the school committee email, and it is with now preview to see and talk about items that affect policy. And we have talked about, we have actually issued resolution on save our public schools. It's a national issue. It's not just a state issue.
Yeah.
We have issued a resolution on marijuana because we want to ban recreational marijuana in town. This is just similar to that. So I'm glad you did share with us and you bring in before us for, so we can have a conversation. But the truth of the matter is that what we saw happen on the 14th, what we saw happen on the 21st, and again on the 24th, okay? We are here for one reason. We are here because of our children, okay? And it's just issuing a statement. It's just like, let's, say some prayer. It's not gonna solve the problem. But the conversation that we are having here right now is because, obviously, you did the right thing in sharing with us. And I believe that, things like this definitely should take a vote. If you don't support fully, let's discuss what we support and perhaps we can send it back to Dover with the modification that we believe. Now, I'll read to you just one paragraph. A quote by David Colson, his spokesman for the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and Explosives, okay? He said, a gun modified with slide fire, which is a mechanism to modify a weapon, fires, and I quote, just like a machine gun would. So perhaps for lack of understanding, and we are not experts in this area, we try to just shoot down something that's coming our way. Without due respect, I mean, if you email me something, it takes me a couple of days to get back to you if it's not that imperative, because people have other jobs. So without due respect, I just would like to ask that you consider, so this is before us, let's continue the conversation, let's support, let's have a position, full position from our body, because our students are demanding.
Carlos, I would be glad to entertain someone putting forth a draft of a resolution of a statement if we're going to support school safety or gun violence or in regards to our students. And so if somebody would like to draft that and we can discuss it,
I'll be
which
glad
is
to.
fine, this one in front of us is not, I think, not the one we want to address. But I would be glad at another meeting, at our next meeting, to entertain something. I'm not opposed to that. I'm just, this specific statement is not appropriate for me. So that's all.
I would like to do that. I don't pretend to be an expert, but I really think of most of the people in this room here, I've done more gunning and hunting than anybody else. Not an expert, but I certainly know a lot about it, and I would be happy to help Carlos with that.
Okay. Michelle, did you want
This has 3 bullet points. My problem is the middle one, not the other 2.
Yes, I was just going to comment that I was going to volunteer to write up something as well if you'd like, but that my only issue with this particular, the authenticity of it seems a little suspect. Like, I'm like, the person who sent it is from a yahoo.com email address, which feels like it should be something at school committee or something. So it does seem a little, I'm not sure that this really came from where it was supposed to have come from. And I've tried to Google the Parkland project and nothing comes up about it. Other things come up, but not related to any measures that have to do with this. But, so, I don't know if we want to talk offline about who wants to write it up or draft
That's
it.
the 3 of us, since we are volunteer too. So if that's okay with you, let's work and have something by the next meeting or 2 meetings from now. We'll let you know if we have it ready.
The only thing that I would suggest is, I would hope, obviously you guys have volunteered to do this, and thank you for that. I would like to see it not be so, like some of these statements that are so very specific about guns. I don't know enough about guns to be able to vote for something like that, because we'd have to have a lot more education. Ed may know it, but I don't think the rest of us know that much about, at least I don't know anything about guns. So I don't want to be saying specific things about guns. I'm okay talking about safety and things of that nature, but I don't want to be voting on things that now I'd have to go out and educate myself about guns first, because I don't think that any of us are in the position to do that. So just with that thought in your mind, and that's why I had a problem with this, was when they started making specific references about types of guns. I just don't know enough about those things, and I don't want to be voting on something that I don't understand fully, that, like Ed says, is an affront to people who are totally law-abiding citizens who have guns and use them for hunting or whatever it is.
No, that's
that,
fair.
They're doing it legally and in their view appropriately, and I don't want to be.
Liza, would it be okay for the fellow members of the committee to actually email the 3 of us, maybe 3 bullets of a couple of things that they 3 things that you think it should be included, and then we compile that. Would that be okay? Since we are discussing, we are already talking about it, so it wouldn't be a violation of open meeting law.
What's the goal?
The goal is to have a resolution to be presented to the body for a vote. So we showed to our students that we are supporting them on this endeavor.
about school safety.
School safety and,
Yeah, and that's why I'm saying it needs to be more about safety than necessarily anti-gun.
You cannot have safety without putting some words in there about banning some type of weapons. What causes, what are we talking about here right now? What has killed so many children within the last 5 years in our schools?
Right, but if we're saying we want to have a ban on weapons that are already banned, then it's saying it doesn't serve any purpose whatsoever, and frankly, I think, like Kay said, if you're making misstatements, if you're asking to ban things that are banned, or if you're asking for weapons to not be modified that it's already illegal to modify anyhow, then you're saying nothing. So that's all I'm saying, is we need to be careful to avoid that.
Yeah, no, that's fine, but I mean, it's not illegal to modify at this moment, and that's the problem, that's the loophole. That, people are allowed to go and modify it on weapons because the law doesn't stop that. That's what they're trying to do right now, is they're pushing, they're changing into the law.
Well, see, but then I thought Kay said that,
Yeah, and that's my problem
Right.
with this whole thing, is that we don't know enough. We're not educated enough about guns, gun laws, gun regulation to be making statements. I think we need to be very careful. I understand the passion and I understand the desire to want to keep our schools safe, but I just don't see how this is going to help anyone.
well, I guess the only thing you can do is, if you want to make a statement, call Chief Olson or somebody and make sure what we're saying isn't inaccurate.
I mean, that's what I had to do. I had to actually call someone
Right.
that,
But
to
police
educate
officers aren't
myself.
lawyers either, or
Yeah.
legislators, so police officers aren't the ones who can tell us, oh, this is legal and that's not legal. So we will, if allowed, 3 of us will work together, we will craft something. It may include something about guns, it may not include something about guns. If we could have the freedom to put something together that we think the committee can get behind, and then we'll present it.
That would be great.
But we may, and then we'll talk about it. Does that make sense? And we'll keep everyone's thoughts in mind, though, because I understand that some people are not comfortable with having anything doing about bans or something, but we'll figure out something. Fair.
Fair. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, new business. Receive a report on the METCO program. And our METCO director, Andrew, Nyamke? Namichi, sorry, my apologies.
It's really pretty simple. You don't pronounce it just Amici. Just listen to what he says. Amici. Okay?
So Andrew, you have been with us for a year and a half now?
Yes.
Yeah, see, I got that right.
Yeah.
So, and this is the first time, the school committee has received a report on
Yes.
METCO specifically?
Yes.
So, we are very excited to learn more.
So, do you want to move that there, or do you want me to?
You want to put that in your USB? You can use the clicker.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, I come prepared.
And it's got a pointer on it, too?
It does, yeah. Good. The middle one's the pointer. There you go. As soon as we get it in, the right, just hit, just exit out. With
Excuse me?
The red, just close it out.
Oh, up here.
Yeah. And the right, Andrew should move, advance. There you go, yep.
All right, wonderful. Well, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
And thank you for allowing me this opportunity to present to you a report on our Hingham METCO program. Did you know that on September 6, 1966, the first METCO school buses rolled from Boston, taking 220 children to classrooms in 7 suburban communities? Well, Hingham was one of the first communities in the state of Massachusetts to accept our METCO students. METCO was created as an effort to improve diversity in suburban schools and their communities. METCO students represent a wide range of socioeconomic standings and come from all areas of the greater Boston area, including West Roxbury, you got Jamaica Plain, Dorchester, just to name a few. Currently, there are 38 METCO receiving districts or communities in the Commonwealth. Just a list of them there. So this evening, some of the topics I will touch upon in my presentation includes our METCO enrollment, our program mission and engagement, our METCO budget, transportation, academic, social, and emotional services that are provided to our METCO students, our long-term plan, And our biggest challenges remains to be our grant allocation from the DESE, parent engagement, transportation, and our after-school program. So our program mission. The Hingham Med School program is committed to providing high-quality educational and social experiences for all students. And the way we achieve this mission is by paying close attention to the achievement and growth of our medical students and to address their academic, social, and emotional needs and challenges. Now, the way we also achieve this is, number one, by setting high academic expectations. We all know that Hingham is a high achieving school. Therefore, it's important for our students to sort of follow that model. Parent engagement is very important. You know, I make sure parents are involved in the education of their children. In addition, supporting our students in sort of developing their self-advocacy skills is very important. Holding students accountable for their education is important. And also helping our medical students to build caring relationships and cooperative relationships from their administrators in their schools, to their guidance counselors, to their teachers, and their peers. So our Hingham Med School Charter. So for fiscal year 18, well, actually, let me take a little step back. By 1969, actually, there were about 16 medical students attending school in Hingham. As of today, we have roughly 42 medical students currently enrolled in our district. This year, we enrolled 4 new families, and the breakdown of our medical enrollment basically shows that we have 4 at Foster, 6 at South. PRS has 5 medical students, Hingham Middle School 14, and Hingham High School 13. Our medical grant budget. So for the fiscal year 18 budget total accounts for about $244,000. Within this budget total, about 24.8% or $81,000 is specifically allocated from the DESE to cover transportation costs. Now keep in mind that this $81,000 does not factor in late buses for our medical students, which allows them to stay after school, get involved in sports and clubs and other extracurricular activities. Now our actual transportation costs, which you see here, actually totals about $118,000, and that is around 36.3% of our total budget for the fiscal year. So as you can see, this is what DESE allocates to us, about 24%. This is what it is actually costing us, about $118,000, which includes our late buses.
Andrew, just one mention on that,
Yep.
that the 81 doesn't even cover the regular transportation either,
Exactly.
though. It's not just late buses. It doesn't cover
Right.
the cost of getting the kids from Boston and back every day.
Right.
And then late buses are on top of that.
Right. And lastly, our salaries and programming accounts for about 38.8% or $126,000. So transportation is sort of, it is one of our biggest challenges. Hingham and Cohasset actually share transportation. So in the morning, our middle and high school students ride on one bus, and then our Cohasset Elementary, K through 5, also ride on their own separate bus. So it's very difficult, especially in the morning, trying to coordinate that for both districts, but we make it happen. And so, some of the accomplishments that we've been able to achieve is, Hingham has historically sustained its transportation costs. So we're able to meet the needs of our students, especially when it comes to our late runs in the afternoon. In addition, this year I worked very closely with our Cohasset medical director to shorten the transportation routes, so that our medical students were not spending too much time on the bus as they already are. And in addition, as a result of this shortened routes, we had consistent arrival of our Metco buses getting to school and leaving from Hingham, getting to Boston on time. But I feel, I strongly believe that we can definitely do more to support our students, our Metco students by, for next year, proposing, and this is sort of in the works right now, is to propose that we eliminate the Metco elementary bus contract that we have with First Student and contracting that bus service with Hingham Public Schools Transportation. Now, the benefits of this, right off the bat, we will see major cost savings on that front. And from my conversations with John, with our Cohasset counterparts, it will be the same for them as well. And in addition, we will have very consistent late runs. So our late buses will be very consistent. And in addition, we're providing a bigger bus as opposed to the shuttles that are provided by Hingham. So therefore, you're able to accommodate more students to stay after school. I strongly also believe that our Metco students actually forge much stronger relationships when they participate on sports teams, when they are given the opportunity to exercise their acting skills with their peers in theater, when they are able to illustrate interpersonal and leadership skills while engaged in clubs, and when they seek academic support with their teachers after school, their ability to self-advocate is valued and appreciated. Now, all these involvements after school greatly impacts our Hingham Metco students' academic, social, and emotional success and growth. And on the topic of academic, social, and emotional growth, some of the actions that we are taking to support the achievement of our Metco students includes the following. Ann's Christian Learning Center, we have a strong partnership with this organization, and they provide tutorial services, so one-on-one tutoring. We encourage our Metco students to take full advantage of the Boys and Girls Club and Boston Public Libraries in the city, especially when they leave, especially for our elementary students when they leave the district. Boys and Girls Club have they have a free homework club after school. It runs from 4 till about 6 p.m. It's completely free. All they have to do is pay a $5 membership to be part of the organization. And Boston Public Libraries also, they have a similar homework club that occurs after school. Our Metco students at the middle school take full advantage of the homework club that exists there. We strongly encourage our Metco students to be involved in the Metco Inc. After School Academic Program, also known as the ASAP program. Our breakfast program, thanks to Kim Smith, our Food Services Director, we've been able to coordinate with each Hingham school to provide breakfast snacks to our Metco students when they arrive in the morning, and that's been going great. Some of our community outreach includes our Mentoring Young Minds program, also known as MYM. That program is a voluntary mentoring program for Hingham Metco students and faculty and staff. Hingham Metco students who sign up for this program request teachers and staff to work with, and those staff members then become a source of academic support for the students, as well as another point of contact for the family, the counseling office, and in addition to the students' teachers. Our Parent Partnership Initiative, also known as PPI, engages Hingham parents with Hingham Metco parents as equal partners in our community of learners, where the spirit is one of cooperating and sharing rather than guest and host. Relationships between families usually develop slowly. Some families plan joint outings, while others get involved in sports-related activities, etc. For example, just a few weeks ago, our PPI group met at Boston Bowl, and all 25 families showed up to this event, and we were so large that they ended up reserving from lane, I believe it was 15 to about 26. And we were well represented, which was an awesome experience to see that to see the growth of that program in such a short time. We began this creation of this program actually back in June of last year, and by September, ending of September, we had roughly close to 15, maybe 18, both Hingham and Metco parents signed up and just ready to connect, and so it's been an exciting growth for this program. Lastly, the Black Nativity, the HEF this year granted the Metco program with funding for the Black Nativity play, which occurs each year at the Paramount Theater. This was a cross-cultural experience that Mr. Swanson, Principal Swanson, and I coordinated. Again, the conversation specifically for this program also started last year, and we're able to experience the play this past December, where Metco students were able to invite a past or present teacher, as well as a friend who lived in Hingham, to attend the play. And that was a huge success, and we are currently, well, I am currently working with HCAM to actually put together a video clip for that, which I'm sure the HEF are excited to see and promote. Our local measures of academic achievement. So it is without a doubt that with a 98% graduation rate that Metco works. This percentage is very true with our Hingham Metco program. The GPA average for Hingham High School Metco seniors is 3.03. This report generated through X2, our students' GPA at the end of term 2. What this data, I believe, tells us is that, basically by the senior year of our Metco students, they are performing at the same level as our Hingham resident students. And in addition, they're also challenging themselves to take honors and AP courses, which is a very exciting thing to see. Just today, I was actually having a conversation with, I was actually sharing this exact slide with one of our teachers who just happened to walk into my office at the high school and literally had a question about this, and I showed her this data, and I even pointed out that even next year we have 3 students that are looking forward and taking AP Stats, Anatomy, and Spanish honors, and so they're already thinking ahead to next year, which is great to see. So our student aspirations. So our Metco students have a wide range of career aspirations that are worth noting. We have some that want to become game programmers. We have a marine biologist. We have a pharmacist, just to name a few, elementary teacher. I truly believe in charting the course for our Metco students to realize their dreams 5 to 10 years from now. And if we continue to provide our Metco students with equitable access to education and resources, they will achieve some of these dreams in these professions. Just this past year, we graduated 3 seniors. All 3 are college bound. All 3 are currently attending, not all 3, but respectively, are attending Rhode Island College. So one student is pursuing nursing. The other student is at Quinnipiac, pursuing a degree in journalism. And the last is at Franklin Pierce, pursuing a degree in elementary ed. This year, we are on course with the same model. We have our current Metco class of 2018, and these are some of their acceptances so far. You have University of Connecticut, Denison University, Pace University, Leslie University, just to name a few. So what does our long-term plan and or vision look like? As I briefly mentioned on the first slide, Metco was created to increase diversity within less diverse communities and to provide our Metco children a chance to attend opportunity-rich suburban schools with the vision of receiving a better education. While being mindful of our district's enrollment constraints, within each Hingham school and at each grade level, my hope is that we gradually increase our Hingham Metco enrollment each year so we can continue moving forward to accomplish the mission of diversity and integration that METCO instilled in our Hingham METCO program and in our Hingham community 50 years ago. My goal is that by 2021, we have increased our METCO enrollment to 50. Now, this would actually allow an equal distribution of our METCO students to be well represented in each Hingham school, and in addition, add to the diversity in the classroom. Like I mentioned before, currently we are at 42 METCO students enrolled in our district. So my plan last year, and I presented this to Dr. Gallo last year, was to add an additional 2 families each year that we draw out our enrollment. Therefore, as you can see this map out, each year adds 2 new students to our total enrollment for the year. So again, by 2021, we will be at 50. And if that is a success, we can continue that same model each year. Now, obviously, funding becomes an issue, especially when you're discussing METCO. And so the way the funding works is that we actually don't see the funds for the additional 2 students until the following year. So if the students are able to remain, and I'm talking the new students, the new enrollments, if they're able to remain in the district going into the following year, that's when we will see the funds for those new students. So far, we have had, since I started last year, we've had all families remain in the program, which is great. And so anything we can do to sort of encourage that upward sort of movement in our enrollment, I think will be great for the district. Now, I also believe we can do more than just increase our enrollment. On the academic front, I think one idea that I'm beginning to explore is a summer math and ELA boot camp to provide additional academic support for our METCO students during the summer months. We can also create a scholarship that affords METCO students additional funds to offset their post-secondary education costs. We will and we should continue to advocate for increased funding for METCO. One way I believe we can do that is to bridge our efforts and form a partnership with our South Shore METCO communities, Cohasset and Scituate, through the creation of a South Shore METCO advisory group. Lastly, we can begin to tackle the very challenging topic of parent engagement. Although our teachers are making sure we are differentiating in the classroom and trying to get parents to be more involved, our METCO parents, or METCO parents in general, historically at times do not see themselves as part of their child's learning and education because of the lack of a relationship they may have with their child's school, teachers, administrators, counselors, etc. I believe we can do a better job of inviting METCO parents into the academic and social life of our school and community, and not just leave the engagement up in the classroom. The achievement of our METCO students, and I believe any student, declines when parents are not involved. We can begin to provide accessibility and encouragement to our METCO families so they're able to attend PTO meetings, school committee meetings, sports, and other extracurricular activities in which their children are involved in. And before I conclude my presentation, I just want to bring your attention to this upcoming event, which is part of a continuing celebration of 50 years of our Hingham METCO program. This is 2008 marks the 50th year. And so on Friday, April 27th, I will be doing a free community-wide screening of On the Line, Where Sacrifice Begins, which this film actually is a fresh examination of the impact of busing for school integration, the historical and social conditions that launched the METCO program. Again, that will be on Friday, April 27th, and the producer, Mike Maskell, is going to be our guest speaker, and he is actually a former METCO student in the town of Lexington, And fun fact about him, about Mike, was that he was the first African American male to model for LL Bean. So I thought that was interesting to know.
He'll fit right.
He will fit right. I thought that was interesting. So he's excited to be here. And again, this will be a completely free screening. And last year, this film actually sold out at Harvard. So it's
So
very
you're doing this here in Hingham?
We'll be doing it here in Hingham,
So
and
I
the
wrote it
locations
down.
to be announced.
I was
but
waiting, like, I
yes,
can go into
it will
Boston
be
at
here.
6 o'clock
It
that
will
day.
be here in
Oh,
Hingham.
good.
We actually bought a 1-year subscription to the video, so
Oh,
we can
okay.
actually screen it as many times as we want for a whole year,
Great.
up until next March, actually. So
Oh, excellent.
that will be April 27th, the Friday before, or actually the Friday after
Yeah.
spring vacation. So I'm looking forward to that, and thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions, comments? I have
Yeah, just a
few,
comment.
but go ahead.
I had the privilege of attending an event. I'm afraid to say the event. Was that Martin Luther King Day?
Yes.
That
yes,
you
the
you
MLK
hosted us?
breakfast that I think I coordinated that with Rick.
Yeah,
a
a
few
great
months
great
ago.
event.
Yes,
You know,
indeed.
thank you. I learned a lot about MECO
Mhm.
and about how the kids sacrifice to come all the way down to the South Shore. You know, some of them spending 3-4 hours on the bus because they have to wait for other kids. You know what I mean? As they leave. And so, great program. I'll be seeing you perhaps on the 12th to meet your new CEO
Yes.
in Boston.
Yep.
And I also read recently, I'm not sure where,
Mhm.
that you are meeting with our legislators.
I did.
That's great.
March 15th was Lobby Day. That's the Lobby Day, which happens every year at the State House. And although I was unable to meet in person with Representative Moschino, I had the pleasure of meeting with our Senator Patrick O'Connor.
Yeah.
And it was a wonderful conversation, very, I want to say a very blunt, honest conversation about some of the challenges MECO is facing. And so, you know, I invited, so last year we actually invited Joan Moschino into Hingham. She had lunch with the high school students and had an open discussion with them, and we're hoping to have that same format this year. I have put out an invitation to Senator O'Connor to join us, because he was unable to join us last year, so I'm hoping this year he does. And also, I'm going to be sending out an open invitation to our new CEO of MECO, Millie, and hopefully she will join us as well. But I think, you know, if we can get all three in the room and sort of have an open discussion about MECO, I think, you know, that'll be great.
As you're looking for funds,
Mhm.
perhaps you want to take advantage of having, what is his name, Masco?
Mike Maskell.
Reach out to LL Bean, because they are coming to Boston.
Of course, yeah. Boston
Right?
loves
So
LL
let's
Bean
take
for sure.
advantage of that.
Indeed.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, there's a
Any-
new store opening, that's right.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
I would add that since I was here then when MECO first came to Hingham, it was only the second year, and it was only a high school program, and it was several years later when we decided that to really benefit kids and have them graduate with comparable achievement to what our kids do, we needed to start them earlier, and so the program moved to first grade. And if you look at the enrollment history, you see a big bump up at one point, and we had students in the elementary schools as well. The challenge, particularly when we went to fourth elementary, is that we never wanted to see a single child in a grade level. And that sometimes happened, not because it was planned that way, but we'd have students and someone would drop out, that kind of thing. That became harder to do when we had 4 elementary schools, of making sure that we had students across the grades in elementary, not every grade, but across the grades. But we had, you know, critical mass of kids that could, you know, learn together and play together and be friends outside of the school. So we have stuck to that, and we always try to have, you know, a graduating class will move out, and then we have to look at where we have spaces, particularly when we were more crowded at the elementary. Elementary seems to have leveled off, as you know, so this is a good time to get more children that can come in at one of the earlier grade levels. We've never taken kindergarten, I think that would be a challenge for children that age on the
Is
bus.
that why there wasn't, is that why there's no students at East? In order to make
Well,
sure that
yeah,
there's a
because in
cohort
order to
that
have children at East, now
Yeah.
you have to divide up that elementary
Right.
population in terms of grades, and we don't want to see single kids in
Yeah, that makes sense.
grade level or building, so.
Andrew, I just had one comment about the
Of course.
parent involvement, which I know is a real challenge.
Yes.
My daughter has a really good friend, they're seniors now, and they've been together the whole way. And I remember at Foster, involving his mom was hard. And we worked, I was involved in the PTO at the time, so I'm wondering, you know, I'm assuming you've reached out to the PTOs, because that's a great, you know, there's a lot of energy
Right.
that can certainly be tapped.
Right. So a lot of the sort of programming ideas that came about with PPI, you know, one of the first sort of Hingham parents that I connected with last year was Deirdre Anderson,
Mhm.
and she's part of the organization Women Aid South Shore, and so when I connected with her, that was sort of my way in, and not necessarily approaching the PTO, but members of the PTO are actually part of the PPI program, and so any messaging that I do with them sort of I feel carries out to other members that may actually be in the PTO. So that has been sort of my avenue
Yeah.
to get more parent involvement there, which is great. But again, you know, the challenge really is making sure our METCO side, our METCO parents are also as involved as our
Yeah.
Hingham parents, which is a challenge. It's not something that's going to be sort of accomplished overnight. It takes time, and so, you know, having that bowling event was definitely reassuring, because, I mean, when I say all families came, it was an incredible scene, and I think, you know, I think June was there, and she saw a little bit of that, and it was just wonderful to see that everyone was there. And this was the day after the nor'easter with the floods and whatnot, and everybody was there on time, and we had fun. And so, looking for more opportunities like that to really grow that partnership. So.
That's great.
Andrew, you mentioned Senator O'Connor Patrick and Representative Machino. Don't forget that there's a portion of Hingham
Yes.
that's represented by State Rep Jamie Murphy.
Got it.
Yeah, we have
Hingham has
extra.
two.
Have two representatives.
Two reps, yeah.
Right. And it's
And we don't want to forget about
It's
our
funny
good
you,
friend.
It's funny you mention that, because I hear the issue that I said is that I hear more about Joan,
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
more so than.
Yeah.
Well, it's a bigger
And
part.
so it's
Yeah,
a
she
right.
is a
It's a
bigger
bigger.
part,
Duly noted.
Yes.
Well, I can reach out as well
Yes.
to Jamie, because his associate, his aide, comes here on a Friday morning once a month to meet at the senior center, and I happen to go down there to meet at the senior center.
Perfect.
I can mention to him, making a
No,
contact.
corner him.
So, And Andrew has news about his own education
Oh
recently.
yes, wonderful news. After 4 long years, brutal 4 years, I've earned my master's degree from Lesley University.
Oh,
Congratulations.
And so now, you know, my parents, you know, we all came here from Ghana when I was about 10 years old, and the main reason why we came was for education, to access better opportunities. And so I know, you know, it's not only going to stop at my master's, but I will take some time off just to rest my brain. But I do have plans for doctorate in the near future, and I think, you know, my younger brother is actually a little bit ahead. He's in the full ride a PhD program in Iowa University in analytical chemistry. Who would have thought? So some of the words he says sometimes just goes over my head, but he's there. He's accomplished that, and I feel like, you know, I'm going to be right there in a few years, and so
Do it.
great.
making the parents proud. You know.
And there's one other thing I wanted to mention to you. When
Yeah.
we've talked with the special ed parents in the CPAC, and in December there's Inclusion Week, and so there were some posters up this year, but then we talked with them about, next year planning more towards that. And as, Metco is to benefit Hingham students in understanding diversity better too, that it might be good to do one of those days of Inclusion Week in this aspect of it, because I our whole community will benefit from all types of inclusion to support all students, and so it might be so I think you should pursue that of linking with the Director of Student Services and the CPAC, and once that gets going, maybe a way of getting more parents involved too, but if we can do that as a bigger week in Hingham, it can benefit everyone. So I just wanted to put that on your list. You have a lot going on, but that could just add more.
The good thing is, I strongly believe we can accomplish all those.
Yeah.
I think we have a great team. I feel very well supported, even though I'm in one-man show. I feel very supported, which is great, and so we can definitely make it happen.
That's great.
Yeah.
Good. Well,
absolutely.
Thank you. You're doing a great job, and
Thank you.
it's
Thank
great
you.
to hear about
And our Friday
students.
Chat and Chew, which I have every Friday with our high school students. You're more than welcome to join us. It's an open invite.
Thank you.
We meet again every Friday, either in room 103 or conference room 1. We have lunch and we have good conversations. So
All right.
it's an open invite for anyone to join, and so feel free.
Great. And keep us posted on the movie. We will help you
Yes.
promote
The
that,
flyer will
because
be. I wanted to actually wait to have this presentation before I sent it out, and so it is done, but it will go out this week.
Great.
So,
Well,
keep
I
a
put it on my
lookout.
calendar already, and since it's in Hingham, that's better than driving to Boston. So
Yeah.
that's great.
All right,
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, 6.2, to hear an update on the NEASC accreditation visit to Hingham High School from September 2017. Rick Swanson, our high school principal, is here, and another night out for you.
Yeah,
Thank
that's
you.
okay.
I would just say that this isn't going to be the presentation about the content of the report and the letter that we get, but we have some good news. Rick's going to share that, and then later on, probably in June, once the seniors are gone, there'll be a full presentation.
Right, all right. Thanks, Dot, and evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Always very happy to share an agenda with Andrew, but never happy to have to go after him. I had to speak after him at our last faculty meeting, and he's just so good. He's got so much charisma, and he's doing such an outstanding job. And truly, as you all know, the Metco program has enriched our school so much, and now for fully a half century, it's been a real gift to this community, and Andrew has been a gift to this community too. I've only been here for 11 of those 50 years, but I know in my experience, the Metco program has never been stronger, and I've never been more hopeful for the direction in which it's moving. So very, very happy to be working with Andrew, and proud and so pleased with the work that's being done. And luckily, in having to follow him, I have good news to share with you. So and it won't be a long presentation, as Dot said. I just wanted to share what I can at this point, which is that I guess it's sort of breaking news. It was only a few days ago that the association, the New England Association of Schools and Colleges, voted on our accreditation. And hopefully will come as no surprise to anybody, but we can now say officially we are accredited for another decade. Hingham High School has earned its stamp of approval from NEASC to be fully accredited over the course of the next 10 years. And so I've seen, initially saw a draft of their report a number of weeks ago, had an opportunity to interact a little bit with the chair of the visiting team who was with us back in September, and go back and forth a little bit about the initial content of that, and they have since sent a copy of the final report, which will soon be released will be released after we get the official letter that comes from the commission after their vote. They also send you a letter with your instructions and next steps and some guidance in terms of when your next report will be due and which commendation or which recommendations they're most concerned with and the things they want you to really prioritize as you move forward and try to evolve as a school. I'm happy to tell you that our commendations vastly outnumbered our recommendations, more so than I've seen in other reports. If there were one more commendation, I could tell you that we had twice as many commendations as we did recommendations. It was awfully close to being double the amount of commendations. On the whole, I was pleased with the report, and what really shone through to our visiting team is what I think we see on a regular basis, and these are evident in the commendations that explicitly commend our students for being very engaged, our teachers for being experts in their field and for being extremely collaborative with each other, our administrators for being collaborative with each other, our curriculum for being well aligned, carefully articulated, and a community that really supports its schools. So I think you'll share my enthusiasm for this report when it's released publicly, and I think that should be happening within the next several weeks. I just had an email from our contact that he asked the other day saying that our letter should be arriving within a couple of weeks. Hopefully that turns out to be true. Initially we thought when we heard the report was coming in a few weeks, it turned out to be maybe like 6 weeks or 7 weeks, but I'm hopeful that this will actually be within the next 2 weeks or so that we get the letter, and then we'll be able to publicly release the report. It'll be available to all of you, and we'll also schedule a report where we can go over some of the commendations and recommendations in greater detail.
Great.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay.
Thank
So
you.
I don't know if you have any specific questions now, or Dot, we should leave it at that for now.
Oh, there will be highlighted commendations as well in the letter when it comes. So there'll be highlighted recommendations of things that they would like us to work first on, but there will also be highlighted commendations as well. And the report by NEASC bylaws needs to be released within 60 days of its receipt. So we've had the actual report, but not the vote, but maybe 3 weeks or so, so we've got plenty of time. That's a requirement. And so there'll be typically a copy that goes to the public library to be available to any of the citizens. A presentation would be done, and we'll put it on the website, and so it's a totally transparent process and product.
The report itself is very long. It's about 100 pages. At the end of every chapter, they highlight commendations and recommendations, and you'll be able to see all 100 pages and read it, and the entire public will as well. But I suspect most people will probably go right to the end of the chapter and see what are they highlighting as their commendations and recommendations, and it's a very interesting report.
And unlike the self-study, where the school rated itself with a word, exemplary, acceptable, that kind of thing, those words don't appear there, but it's clear what the tone is.
Okay. Great.
Well, thank you, congratulations.
Thank you
and
very much.
We look forward
Thank
to
you.
the details.
All right. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Okay. 6.3, to discuss the fiscal 19 operating budget and act as appropriate. So we are gonna do one more budget update, and last week, the Board of Selectmen revoted their original votes so that they are now in sync with what the advisory committee had recommended. And so
You can see all of the dates and the different votes and the percentage change and dollar change in each case. And of course, all starting based upon the percentages based upon the operating budget for the current year, which is very top, 49,762,697. So, so this is where we are at the moment, and we, as we've had the last few meetings, have a couple of changes. another reduction that we're able to take based upon circumstances, not reduction of program, but I think it's $81,000. Let's see if I can get this up here. So these are small. I think you all have a copy of this. Oh, is this what they have it, John?
Yep, they do, yeah, they have a.
This one?
Yes, that's the front
Okay.
page, yep.
So this one kind of summarizes where we started, which interestingly is in the upper right corner, where we have the FY18 budget furthest to the right, and then we have what we originally proposed back in January of the request of $52,800,172, and then you can see what the regular ed and special ed pieces of that were, and at that point it was a 6.10% increase requested overall, and again broken down into the special ed and regular ed portion. The bottom 2/3 of the chart there is a list of all the changes that have been made, the reductions that have been made. And if you follow down the date of those, that's the last column, the next to last column on the right. And if you look down at the very bottom of that list, and look at the 3/23, that's today's date, that's Friday's date, I'm sorry, 3/23, and you look at those individual new reductions. One is a teacher leave of absence. One is a teacher resignation, someone who's moving to a different part of the country, actually. One is another teacher leave of absence with a smaller amount of savings. And then we also made a reduction in the special ed part of the budget because the social collaborative, which has about half of our children who are out of district, did vote its budget for next year, and the budget was a 1% increase in the tuitions for the collaborative. This past year, the collaborative moved to separate rates, separate tuitions for our member communities, and there are 11 of those now in South Shore, and a different rate for the member communities versus the many other communities that participate by having students that are collaborative, but not are among the 11. So the actual tuition then is 1% increase. What we budgeted for all of our tuitions was a 3%. So John did the calculation of what going from a 3% budget to a 1% actuality, and that was a savings of a little over $20,000. So those were the new things. Also on that list, if you want to count that in with all the other things that were reductions in bottom line, but not reductions that caused a loss of a program or a service or a person, that's the $395 that you saw at the last meeting, and so that would be a total in reductions of $741,115. And I know that you have not approved those recommended reductions, but you did see them last week, so we wanted to have you have a record of how much total in dollars have changed. And that all is summarized in a different way up in the left-hand corner of the graph. So with this newest total of the 4 items of $81,000, if you look up in the left corner, you can see that our gap, which last week was $133,000 with this change, it's a $52,360 gap at this point, which is something that I honestly think is very achievable with still a retirement that we're expecting and don't yet have, with the possibility of the kindergarten position that we have budgeted might not be needed, that I think I have one more leave of absence, full year of leave of absence that will save some as well. So I think that that gap we can close. And that will be a great thing, of course. So, where's the other slide? Oh my goodness, so frustrating. So you have another piece of paper.
That's 104, Dot. You might be able to scroll this way.
Oh, okay, good, thank you.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, so here again are the votes that have been taken. And here's a slide similar to the one that we presented at the last meeting, except the bottom line of where we are is different because of the additional $81,000. And this slide as well, you saw a version of this last week, but the bottom line was 133,000, and now it's 52,000. And that gap, of course, was a gap that was the result of the school committee vote being different from the vote that the advisory committee had taken on March 6th. So these last two slides you've seen before, but a little bit different because of the news tonight of the 81,000. And what I would like to recommend, John and I would like to recommend tonight, is that if your consideration is to take a new vote, to revote what you voted before, that vote would include or encompass two things. One being an affirmation for what figure, what items you want to be in the final amount that you would vote. In other words, take a look at those recommendations I made last time, and is there someone to change them around to give us what the vote would be in terms of a number, what items of the new items would be included in that. And then I would hope also that you would do what school committee has done the last 3 or 4 years, and that is to give us the consensus of what things you would recommend are putting back should there be additional money available beyond the 52,000 that we currently need. So it's really a 3-part thing. You know, give us some direction on the recommendations from last time. Give us the amount that you want, or tell us that you're going to stay at the vote that you have. And finally, give us some sense of where we would go if we are able to indicate a bottom line that's beyond what the 52 that we need to still come up with, but that allows us to go as far as we can, do as much as we can of the things that you had consensus about when you last voted for the budget for the coming year. So probably the easiest thing to do is to look at this slide, which has on it the 1,310,999 new things. So this is what I had recommended. I think it reflects a lot of the discussion that we've had in terms of what things should be in, but there were also some people who had ideas about moving things around. So we have to know what your bottom line is going to be, but really, whatever you decide your bottom line is going to be, it is going to be the advisory committee's recommendation, of course, that will go to the town. And then, what do you think of this list? And then, are you willing to give us some authority? And that really has to be consensus, because while you all have different ideas about how this breakdown should go, if we were to come up with another 50,000, for example, then what would be the priority? And that needs to be a consensus, obviously. about where we would go.
So, can we start with the total number? Can I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to revote the budget, and my motion would be to now vote for a 52,006,697 budget amount, which would be in line with what the selectmen and the advisory committee have voted.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion or thoughts on that?
Got close.
Yeah, we got close, and we'd be united going into town meeting on that too. So, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so that's unanimous, so
Good.
we are in line. Now, we look at the recommendation of what is to be included. So that would be the sort of middle column on this blue and white sheet.
Yep, one revised amount kept.
Yeah. So we had talked last time about, this includes the counselors, the kindergarten teacher, the para requests, the liaison stipends for special education, the special ed teachers, and then the partial support of the social emotional curriculum texts and partial of the math tutors. Yeah. So does anyone have?
That would be where my recommendation, if you would ask me, what my recommendation if more funding became available, was to do more in each of those two categories. Right now, they're partially funded, but to provide more dollars for.
Oh, and the secondary teachers too.
Yeah.
So
for both of
your
those.
recommendation is the math tutors and the secondary teachers? Those
Yes.
two?
Yeah, obviously depending upon how much money might be available, but right now they're partially funded. One is 3/5 funded and the other one is a little more than half funded, because it's, it represents 2.7 out of 5.1 FTEs.
And a lot of that we'll know May 1st when we have the kindergarten numbers, and then we'll know the scheduling at the secondary level as well. So it's all kind of, you know, it could move different directions. So does anybody have thoughts on this initial list before we add to it? Does anybody have thoughts on that?
Initial list being those two things?
No, on.
Everything in the middle.
Yeah.
The what adds up to the 887,000.
We're not adding to it yet, but
Yeah.
just
Okay.
where it exists now.
Well, I think it depends on what we add. Whether that affects anything that's on this list right now.
Right, yep.
So,
You've,
I'd like to add that HR director.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear, Kate. What-
I would like to add the HR director. I would like to see that position back on the list.
But you know, there is a part of me that thinks that we need to have the new superintendent search take place first, because I don't know that I'd want to hire the HR director first and then have the new superintendent come on. I'd kind of rather have the new superintendent be here to be part of that process. I just think that would be the order that would make more sense. And as much as I want the HR person and think we need it, I just think that might make more sense.
I agree with Aileen, unfortunately. I
mean, I only
completely
wanna pick-
value
yeah.
the need for it, but
But we are doing other hiring of other positions and not waiting. So I'm just perplexed why we're waiting on this one.
To me, those are fulfilling current positions. This HR director is creating a new position and potentially allowing for a restructuring. And so I would prefer to have the superintendent search happen and understanding then what direction that person, and give that person some flexibility as well of even weighing in on, is that a position that they would choose to add or advocate for.
And I see the HR person being somebody who's working very much hand in hand
Definitely.
with the superintendent. And we're about to engage in a superintendent search, and I'm hoping that we will be doing one search that will last us for a very, very long time. And that we hire, somebody that we're all really pleased with. And I don't want to not let that person come in and sort of have a say about somebody that they're going to be working with that closely as the HR person. I just think it's putting the cart before the horse to have the HR person come first. Because the HR person isn't going to have a say on who we pick for a superintendent. I wouldn't see that playing out. But I could see the superintendent having some contribution into who we hire for the HR person and what the HR person's job description might be. Not the reverse.
I would agree with that. I do think that the central office support should be high on the priority list, higher than some other things, in my opinion. List.
I have that too.
Yeah, I agree with that.
As to Kay's point, it's important that we make sure that the HR person is not dropped out of the list.
Oh, I agree. I mean, I think we need the person. And if we weren't about to embark on a superintendent search, I would say, yeah, let's do that, if we can. I just think that the timing of it.
And the good thing
is the
about it,
problem.
too, in waiting a little bit, okay, is that we don't have the next section of contract negotiations. It's not happen until 3 years from now. And I think, the person being considered for the position should be sort of like engaged with the contract negotiations. So we still have plenty of time to get that person involved, and be familiar with negotiations if we choose to go forward with hiring that person. Because I believe that person should have a slash, labor relations, labor employee relations, built into her title. That the person on HR should be able to do that as well, because perhaps we could save money there. I said that before and I'll say it again. We hire now a counsel to counsel us, and not to say that we wouldn't continue, but perhaps we could, part of that money, be allocated for this HR labor relations person. You know what I mean? And then we just pay the legal just for consultant fees. That person doesn't have to be part of the contract negotiations. So there's a lot to consider.
I support the HR director too, and I would love to see it added back here too, but I guess I'm just trying to figure out, we don't really have another $90,000, right? So I'm just trying to figure out what exactly are we trying to vote on right now, right? What are we?
Well, if we were gonna go with Kay's proposal, then we would have to remove $90,000 from this list.
Well, if we were to go with that proposal, I think we'd have to, we couldn't have that person without an assistant. I think we would have to put the two together. And right now, we don't have a space. See, that's not entirely our concern, but it is our concern if we have.
But that's part of the reason why I go back to, like Cynthia said, supporting the central office support. But because I thought that central office support person was sort of going to be in the semi-world of HR and would ultimately, when we do hire an HR person, be the HR person's assistant.
Yeah.
And so they'd already have been getting some knowledge and background as to the procedures and have that already up and running by the time we hire a full HR person. So I'm good with the central office support person, with the thought that it's supposed to be somebody that's sort of in training to be the HR person's assistant.
Working on personnel
someday. Right.
issues, yeah.
I would, I can't say much about this evening, but we do have some anticipated change in personnel here, more than one person. And so and this is new, brand new.
Yep.
So our need there is that of the people that are transitioning, there is some part-time staff which we will need to move to full-time. So we have to keep in mind that we're going to have an obligation, financial obligation to staff what we've got and a few FTEs more. I just can't, none of these are public yet.
Yeah.
But it's more than one transition that we hadn't anticipated that we would have that we will need to put dollars to. So,
Which may end up, if putting resources where the real needs are could help with all of this type of support. So I think we leave the definition as central office support because we know that central office needs more support and we can figure that out later. So anything else? I mean, I think, I understand your passion and the need, and I do agree on the definite need. I do agree with Aileen, and I think Cynthia does, that, and Carlos does, so with consensus that's gonna stay high on the list. And the task of doing the consulting, of defining the role of HR is still gonna happen.
I would also like to, and
we're still
certainly
moving forward.
Certainly I'm in favor of the position. 3 years ago, not on current negotiations, 3 years ago, it was Ellen Keene at the time. Ellen and John and I all recommended that was a position that we needed. We still do need it, so I'm not at all challenging that. I would say, with respect to Carlos' comment about a way to fund it, it would reduce our legal costs, and I don't see that at all. I think that the person that we would hire would have a role in negotiations, would be there in every one, but I can't imagine negotiating with without an attorney being present. So
Yeah, I do agree with that. I don't think that I don't envision being at the bargaining table without counsel when we're doing the actual contract
in the actual negotiations.
But I
yes.
still do think that there's room for savings, because I think we have consulted sometimes, over HR type issues, that if we had an HR person who knew more about that, we wouldn't have had
I
to
would agree
call
with that.
our attorney to ask the question.
Yes, I agree, and someone who could do the research and
Right.
so on. Exactly.
So I think there would be savings, I'm seeing it coming in
Sure.
a different place,
Yeah.
that's all.
Okay. Anyone else?
Well, I think the need for central office support is, to repeat, I'm on that bandwagon. Someone commented, it just depends on how much money we have or we
Yeah.
don't have. So in terms of, I certainly would support central office support, additional central office support,
Yeah.
the language lab tech, and the secondary art teachers, if you're looking for my wish list.
So sorry, that is what I was trying to ask. Are we looking now to, if there is more money available, what would be our priorities, or are we looking to?
Yes, let's do that now.
So that we wouldn't have to come back
Yeah.
to you to say, what
Right.
should we do
So
now?
as we stand here now,
It would be
it's-
part of the recommendation to change the.
But wait, is that after math tutors and secondary teachers?
So math tutors and secondary teachers are included in the itemization
Well,
of
not all of them.
priorities.
Right.
No, it would
Filling
just,
out the-
whatever the
the
dollars
supplement,
would buy
yeah.
in terms of a couple more FTEs or hours in the case of,
Are those are we including that in our priorities?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
I am.
So it's the revised as is 887, and if there's more money, then the secondary, then the math tutors, and then miraculously, if there's more money.
Well, or you,
Right.
Michelle, you could say, I want just some of the secondary and the math. If
Right,
you- what,
okay.
I mean, what's truly your priorities?
Right, okay.
Is the central office support, is that a full FTE?
0.5.
0.5 was what we had in the budget.
Is that what's listed here?
Yes.
Yes,
0.5?
yep.
Is that enough?
Gotta start someplace. Well, I mean,
And well, I mean, you know, the original request was for a personnel director and a 0.5 to assist the person, you know, but, we've been doing and will continue to do. You know?
Well, and I believe this was, we had some part-time people that we were gonna make full-time, or
Yes, we
to
did.
round
Yeah.
out the position, yeah.
We have someone who's been working part-time by choice and will be moving on, and we really need for that person to be the replacement.
Right.
And it might not cost us more dollars, because if someone is going out at a higher rate and we hire someone
Mhm.
coming in, then that differential would be smaller and may not.
It's a very small one, but did this club stipends, did that include the stipend for climate committee at the high school?
Yes.
Yes.
So currently, there is no stipend for climate committee?
This proposal would remove all stipends, yes, so climate
Okay.
committee, beekeeper, and the cooking club.
Okay. Not to pick favorites, but I would like to see a stipend for that climate committee
Okay.
person. I think it's a pretty important role, and it doesn't have a stipend right now.
I think that was 3, was it not?
The beekeeper?
I think it was 2 high
The
school and a middle
climate?
It
school.
was 3 positions in that amount.
Yes,
There is,
climate,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, so
and-
climate
okay.
is,
Now I feel bad.
one piece of that, about 1,300,
With
I
respect to
think.
beekeeping and cooking.
So I think what Michelle is saying is to just separate out the climate
Sure.
committee person.
Sure, yeah.
Yep.
I would agree
I mean,
with that.
you're gonna talk about all these and then sort of give us where
Okay.
you think you wanted to go, right? So,
Well, so I guess my, from a realistic perspective, my problem here is that I don't really realistically seeing, you know, us finding more than what it would take to fill in the secondary teachers and the math tutors.
Mm-hmm.
So are we going pie in the sky here? Is that really what we're doing?
you never know.
You never know?
Well, that's, well, I think some of it too is, so, say, you know, depending on what happens with the retirement, the leave of absence, and then, you know, do we need the kindergarten teacher?
Mhm.
And then, you know, what happens at the secondary level when all the schedules
Right.
come through
So
and
maybe you don't
it
need all
all
that.
lays out, then, you know, where are we? And then even at that point, you know, May 1st, depending on what happens with central office of how that lays out,
Mhm.
and how does that fit in with all, so I think some of it, you know, there's still a lot of
Moving
pieces to
pieces.
fall into place. And,
And
you know,
makes
maybe
sense.
it will be that by that point, okay, we do one more secondary teacher, and, you know, the central office becomes a higher priority. You know, I think we
Right.
have to kind of, I'd like to see how it all,
Well, that's what I was gonna say. I mean, I
Falls
feel,
out.
I mean, I know you don't wanna come back again, but I feel like there's so many variables that if you wind up with $28,000, I might have a different
yeah.
thought of where I wanna put that.
Yeah,
money
I
versus.
kind of agree. I think that we can, I think we can vote as we have on the number that we're gonna put forward. I think that we probably are all pretty much in agreement with this middle column as
Yeah.
being
Right.
keepers.
Yeah.
But as far as what I'd want to do beyond that, I don't feel like I have enough. I don't feel like I have enough information to be able to make those decisions right now. I know I think last year we did, but I don't.
Last year was pretty clear, though. There was
Yeah,
like
yeah.
one or two
There-
things that
yeah,
were
yeah.
just.
I mean, I'm sorry, may I?
Yeah, yeah.
We could, we can come back. Sometimes we're needing to act quickly on things,
Yeah.
and that can be a nuisance, but we can come back. I think, still I would like to see in the motion, something to the effect that if additional funds were available, we would be invited to come back and share them with you to get,
So that would be my suggestion,
Yep.
is that, we, so we pick 1 through 5, for example, and we give the superintendent the discretion to work, with the numbers and try to implement those if it is possible. So
and
that way we
perhaps to
can
do that the first meeting in May, because we would be during that first week in May, we meet with the elementary principals. We know how those FTEs are going to break down, and we also meet with the 2 secondary principals and the directors.
Yep.
And we'll know where there could be an amount needed for, 2/10 more of a math teacher or whatever that might turn out to be.
So, before we have the motion, I'm just gonna reiterate. So, Dr. Gallo's recommendation is on the math tutors, and then the secondary teachers, additional FTEs, partial FTEs.
According to
And-
need, too. I mean,
Right.
we wouldn't
Right.
just
Yeah.
want to fill that out once we know what the need is, and if the need weren't there for more FTEs, then, I wouldn't recommend that. I'd recommend that you come up with something else that's important.
And then I think we're all united on the central office support of some sort, especially to support personnel issues. And then there was the climate committee stipend. Then Ed mentioned the language lab and the secondary art teachers. So,
so move.
I think, those are the priorities, and so I think that,
Yeah.
that's where we are on that consensus. So we will note that at our first meeting in May, we'll get an
First
update.
meeting in May is the second Monday, because the first Monday would be an orientation.
Yeah.
All right, so what's our motion?
Yeah, I'm not quite clear on that.
I was trying my best
You
over
wanna
here.
try?
Can't make any promises.
Well, okay.
Is that what
We have
Liza
the
just
motion
said?
for the budget that Eileen did
Yes.
and was
Yeah.
passed. Then we have
So were you making
the
that
math
motion?
tutors, secondary FTE, central office support, and then it got a little gray.
Well, do we need a motion on the revised amount kept? And then the other ones are by?
Yeah, I think you need to revise the amount kept.
Okay.
Right, so
The
you're saying
887,
the
848.
revised amount, you wanna keep all of those, we still have 52,000 to make up, right?
Right.
Just to get to the number first.
Yeah.
And then,
In the event that we
in the
are
event there's
able,
more money after the 52,
I think that's what Dot was saying, that you
Yeah.
can come back to us
right.
Right.
So,
with additional
so these are
with
ideas now,
additional
but we wouldn't
information.
implement any of these. We would come back to you
Okay.
the
Oh, yeah,
first
still have to
meeting
close that.
in May, once we know about the,
Gap closure.
FCE.
we'll have the gap closed by
Yeah.
then, I'm pretty
Yeah.
confident we'll have the gap
and we
closed
would
by
know
then.
where we are then.
And then
you
you'll know
could,
what available funds there are, and you can make that decision as to where those would be directed.
So let me take a crack at it. John, you tell me if I can.
thank you for doing it.
I will make a motion that we will authorize the budget to include the $887,848 of items listed under the revised kept amount column on this budget worksheet that we have presented. And further, should additional funds become available, that the administration has the ability to come back to us with additional information and
Right.
seek us to have another vote on what we would prioritize to, at that juncture, include in the budget.
Sounds like you got it. I think
Okay.
you got all the essential components.
All the
to me.
ideas are there.
Don't ask me to repeat
I
that.
have a
Just
second.
second it.
Second, I'll second that.
I have to watch TV later.
I'll watch the video, don't worry, Jane, about it.
It's a little lengthy, sorry.
Okay, so they will make up the $52,360 gap and then come back. Okay. So, on that note, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, good. All right. And then we have consensus on the other items and we don't need a motion on that.
Right.
Correct? Okay. Okay, good, so fiscal year 19 budget is, and John, does that, I guess that 52, that includes our capital, so we don't have to revote the capital budget?
The
Or is this
52 does
just
not include the
operating?
capital.
That does not, that's just operating.
52 does not include capital. That's just the operating budget.
Right, but
So,
you are where you
Yeah.
are with the capital.
We don't need to do capital.
okay, we didn't need to revote that.
We
Okay,
don't need to, I
Okay.
mean,
good.
I mean, eventually, we should probably revote the capital for, I mean, just for the record, because
well,
the auditor's
eventually what
math-
we need to do is, bottom line doesn't need to be revoted, but what needs to happen is that, given the reduced amount,
The bottom line was reduced.
Right.
Right, but we need to talk about what,
Right.
how to move it around, like
So
what
if
changed.
the school committee is in favor, we'll accept the bottom line, which I presume that we'll accept the bottom line. Then now, we should have a long-range planning committee meeting.
right, to
So
identify
that
what's
we
in
can
it.
sort of identify where we'll cut, because we started with 1.368, I think it's 1,368,000, and we're down to, I think, 1,023,000. So we'll have to reduce 340,000, so I think long-range planning, we should get together and we should look at the individual items and find out how we would reduce those. And then, I mean, we bring it back to the committee to say, this is what the committee thinks.
Right, and then we'll have a vote.
All right, okay,
But you don't have
Which will
to
set it
recommend.
back at the
I do. We have the
1.23
same
million.
okay.
Yeah.
All right, next, to hear a report on the proposed Massachusetts Next Generation Accountability System.
Yes,
Amy.
that's me, everyone.
Everyone's been waiting for this.
Bated breath. I know it. I know it.
Trepidation is the word I would.
Oh, don't go now. It's gonna get good. Where are you going?
That's meeting down.
Oh, wait a minute.
Where'd it go?
Okay. So, hello everyone.
Hello.
Nice to see ya. This is a continuation. I forgot this is doing that there. This is at the last meeting, as we were talking about the plans in grade 10, right, for the new competency determination. There was a question about where Massachusetts stood relative to the statewide accountability structure. And it was good timing because the Friday prior, Rob, Curtin, Eric, and Gonzalez presented this slideshow to a meeting of regional assistant superintendents and superintendents, sort of giving an overview of what's to come. So I will note to start that this is not my work. This is the work of Rob Curtin, Erica Gonzalez. And so what I will do is sort of try to give you an overview of what we were told. This is a work in progress. It is not set in stone because the Massachusetts regulations actually make reference to the 5 accountability level system. And so in order to implement the new system, they will have to update and change the state regulations. Does that make sense? So there will be a process coming up for open public comment, not about the accountability system, but about the regulatory language that's associated with it, if that makes sense. So what I plan to do tonight is just give you an overview of what they're proposing the new accountability system look like. One of the biggest things to note is we still don't have labels for some things, like the new levels. We don't know what they're going to be called. They're TBD, but this at least gives you some sense of where the system is going. And I will make this presentation with the caveat that I'm not an expert at this. This is literally March 2018, hot off the presses, and still in development at the state level in collaboration with their board. But I talked to Erica last week, and she said, this is pretty much set unless they're told by their board to go and change something. But as of now, this is what the accountability structure is shaping up to look like. So I'll give you, this is a brief summary of the points we'll cover tonight, and I'll try to move as expeditiously as possible. If there's any questions, please feel free to stop and let me know. So first off, some highlights. There is the introduction of additional accountability indicators, which provides information about schools' performances and student opportunities beyond test scores. They're really trying to make a move toward capturing, quote, the whole child, and not just this child's performance on English, math, and science exams.
And also to Massachusetts systems, the word systems at the end in MCAS, being plural.
Yes. They're also looking at both normative and criterion reference components. So the accountability percentiles, those will stay, right? That's the normative component. But then their introduction of progress toward target, which would be more criterion referenced. Focus on raising the performance of each of the school's lowest performing students. This is different. We used to talk about subgroups, right? Now they're talking about the lowest performing students, sort of independent of membership in a particular subgroup, which is a different kind of concept than we've worked with here in Massachusetts. There's a discontinuation of the accountability and assistance levels 1 through 5. They're going to be replaced with accountability categories that define the progress that schools are making and the type of support they may receive from the department. And another change, the district will no longer receive the rating of its lowest performing school. It will receive an overall rating on progress of the district toward making its targets, which is a different change. So a little bit about timeline and process. This outlines the process they've undergone. As you know, Every Student Succeeds Act adopted in December 2015. 3 years later, we're still working toward the regulatory revisions, and it's proposed that this fall, the 2018 accountability results for all public schools will be released using this new system. So the data coming out of the MCAS exams this spring will become the first set of data presented in this new structure come fall. And so I'll be back in the fall, as you know, to give you a little bit more of an update at the time about the new structure and what it actually turned out to be, but this is sort of a bit of a preview of what's to come.
I'm sorry, Jamie.
Yes?
So what will they compare it to?
We're starting fresh.
So you're
In
not,
the system.
you're not progressing if you're starting from nothing.
It gets a little complicated into equipercentile linking, which we talked a little bit with MCAS, where they're going to take sort of we talked about last week too with the grade 10, where we'll have roughly the same proportion in the various categories, but there's new structure on one which they calculate progress, if that makes sense. So we'll get to that in just a minute. So accountability indicators. So just at the top, ESSA requires states to include the following indicators in any accountability system. So here's sort of the federal mandate. There has to be academic achievement based on annual assessments in English language arts, math, and science. So that's going to be a given, and that's still a part of the new system. A measurement of student growth or progress for elementary and middle schools must be there. So that goes back to your point, Cynthia, around what would that look like. We must look at graduation rates for high schools. We must look at progress in achieving English proficiencies for ELs or English learners. And we must have at least one measure of school quality or student success. So that is a new addition trying to capture sort of the bigger picture of a life in a school. In terms of Massachusetts, and this is looking at non-high schools, in terms of achievement, they'll be looking at ELA, average scaled score. mathematics average scale score, and science achievement, and looking at the composite, the CPI there in terms of science. In terms of student growth, they'll be looking at the mean student growth percentile in ELA, and the mean student growth percentile in mathematics. In terms of ELs, progress made by students attaining English proficiency, or the percentage of students meeting annual targets required to attain English proficiency in 6 years. And additional indicators include chronic absenteeism, or the percentage of students who are missing 10% or more of their days in school membership. That is a new indicator. However, based on the preliminary review of our data, that doesn't look to be as an indicator that would be a concern for us. But certainly there are, particularly in more urban districts, that indicator is a bit of a concern, particularly with the transient population. When we look at high schools, we still have achievement, right? So we still have ELA, math, and science. We still have student growth in ELA and math. We look at also high school completion. So the 4-year cohort graduation rate, which is, again, is still factored in now and under the current model. Extended engagement rate, so a 5-year cohort graduation rate plus the percentage of students still enrolled. I'm not really understanding that variable just yet, but they assured us more information will come about all these indicators in the time to come, as well as the annual dropout rate. When we look at ELs, or English proficiency, progress made by students attaining English language proficiency, and again, the percent of kids meeting the annual targets required in order to attain English proficiency in 6 years. And additional indicators just for the high school include chronic absenteeism, and again, the percent of students missing 10% or more of their days in the school membership, as well as the percentage of 11th and 12th graders completing advanced coursework, such as advanced placement, IB, dual enrollment courses, and/or selected rigorous courses. There will be a piece of and this is where they're trying to get at sort of overall school quality and student access to high-performing, rigorous course of study. This is new, and again, they assured us more information will come about how they will calculate these particular variables. This is an English language proficiency indicator. Again, it's a new indicator in 2018. It sets students on a non-linear path to achieving English proficiency in 6 years. So again, this is, relatively new. They set the target for each EL based on the starting point. So when kids come in who are English language learners, they're given the access assessment, which actually gives us some sense of sort of their proficiency level. It looks at the grade and then their years in Massachusetts. School and district performance will be measured based on the percentage students meeting their targets each year. At the current rate that we have, this does not look like it will be an indicator for us because we don't have enough students enrolled to form a subgroup to then report the data on. So just FYI, it's there. And so if our population does grow at any point, this will be something we need to be focused on more. Although we always focus on the achievement of our students. But with this particular indicator, it's not looking like it would be a factor for us here at Hingham. In terms of accountability indicators, they will use the average scaled score for the science and high school test once all tests have transitioned to next generation MCAS. Accountability data may be negatively impacted by late or inaccurate data submissions. So again, they were really encouraging us to ensure that our student information management system, that the SIMS reporting was accurate and timely. And they have transitioned many of the districts over to SIF, which is the School Interoperability Framework, which is essentially ongoing submission of data back and forth between the district and the state to ensure more timely and accurate reporting on student data. As well as the student course schedule, or SCS, which is the avenue by which they will get information. And so, so through the SIMS system, the student information management, that's where they will pull information about student enrollment and subgroup membership, as well as the chronic absenteeism that we mentioned as one of the new indicators in the system. And then in terms of how to find out whether kids have access to advanced coursework, they will use the student course schedule, the SCS part of the SIMS, to collect information on student schedules, to look at sort of the quality and types of courses. What question they got that they really couldn't address was sort of the varying levels, the different, we might call something honors that somebody else is advanced and somebody else calls, excelling. The labels that are used in the course schedule do vary. And so they said the more to come here, but they're trying to incorporate sort of the full life of a school program as a part of accountability rather than just performance on English, math, and science. And so they're trying to capture the quality of the life of the school, and they can only do it with variables that all schools in Massachusetts have access to. So that's the student course schedule, where they can actually access the course schedules of the students across the state. Yeah, Cynthia.
So the student information management system, is that something we have? Or is it interface with X2?
It is X2.
Oh, it is X2.
It's
Right.
so
That's just
so
what they
the
call it.
right. So
Okay.
SIMS, SIMS, is the statewide system. It tells you how to code all the data, and then each district purchases like a software company that actually helps us do our SIM submissions.
Okay.
But SIMS is sort of the statewide structure, not the local
So it's not
software.
creating more work for someone, that's really what I was asking.
No, we're already
For
doing it.
next
And actually, the
districts.
movement to SIF, to the Student Interoperability Framework, has actually made our reporting a bit smoother.
Okay.
So rather than ongoing big pushes of data for October 1, for example, that data actually goes back several times, and we're able to check errors and fix errors rather than having to wait and then submit all at once. It's more of an ongoing process than a sort of culminating event, if that makes sense. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about how those new accountability indicators will be weighted in the overall picture. What we do know is the federal government requires us to have quote unquote substantial weight given to achievement, progress, L proficiency, and graduation rate. So taken collectively, they must be given much greater weight than any other measures of school quality or student success. So while they are talking about chronic absenteeism, while they are talking about access to quality programming, that can't be given more weight than the traditional accountability structure, looking at achievement in English, math, science, progress towards the proficiency and graduation rates, et cetera. So that while they're introducing new variables, they can have a greater proportionate weight than what was always there. The current ratio of achievement and growth is 3 to 1, so 3 achievement to 1 growth. And they want to be able to keep that same sort of 3 to 1 ratio when they think about what the new accountability system would look like. The impact of increasing the weight of the growth in the system could increase the differentiation between high and low achieving schools. It could increase the value of a normative measure, so there will always be a first percentile and a 99th percentile, right? So when you think about statistics, in order to build that bell curve, somebody needs to represent the bottom and someone has to represent the top. And so they're trying to find better ways to capture performance without somebody sort of being here, looking at relative progress and growth. By increasing the weight of the growth in the system, it also decreases the value of the grade 3 assessment results. For example, there's no student growth percentiles coming out of grade 3, right? Because we don't have anything to compare their growth against, because that third grade's the first time. And it also decreases the value of the science assessment in the system because there's no SGP for science, right? So they're thoughtful about sort of maintaining the current proportion of 3 to 1 so as to not factor these other unintended consequences of changing the structure. All indicators need to be included in the weighting. They know that much. Progress toward English proficiency only applies to a subset of schools, and weighting needs to be flexible. So for example, for us in Hingham, that would likely not be a variable that we'd have to worry about. So while we don't have to have that variable, someplace like Abington does, right? So then how then does that become an equal system when we're getting sort of not judged on an indicator that they are, right? So that's the discussion. The ratio between achievement and growth can be held constant between non-high schools and high schools, but the actual weighting will differ. So it gets a little complicated, but we have a full program that has non-high schools and high schools together. ESE intends to apply the same weighting rule to both the normative and criterion reference components of the system, And again, their recommendation is to maintain the current 3-to-1 ratio. However, they did say that the Board of Education will make the final vote this spring, but this is what they're recommending to their board as the proportion in terms of the accountability structure, the 3-to-1 ratio. This is the proposed weighting of indicators in non-high schools. So that would be our elementary and our middle schools. So looking at achievement, and you'll note on the right, again, the current weighting is 3-to-1. So you'll note two different structures here, one with ELLs and one without ELLs, right? So in terms of achievement, ELA math and science achievement values based on the scaled score will represent with ELL 60% of the accountability rating, whereas without ELLs would account for 67% of the accountability rating. Under student growth, ELA and math student SGPs, or student growth percentiles, will account for 20% with ELLs or 23% without ELLs. EL proficiency, again, will be about 10% for those districts that have Ls, and not be a factor for those districts that don't have Ls. An additional indicator, chronic absenteeism, again, makes up 10%, whether you have Ls or don't have Ls. So this is what they're looking at in terms of how to control for that L proficiency subgroup that some districts may have and some districts may have, not have rather. So you'll see them playing around with the percentages to both equal up to the full 100%. This is the proposed weighting of indicators in high schools and middle school, or middle high schools, or K-12 schools. So again, it changes a bit because we have additional indicators that, again, particularly at the high school level. So if you look at achievement, with Ls, it's 40%, with no Ls, it's 48%. Student growth, or the SGP in English and math, 20% with Ls, 22% with non-Ls. High school completion, so the 4-year cohort rate, the extended engagement rate, and the annual dropout rate will make up 20% with ELLs and 20% without ELLs. So that's going to be pretty standard whether you have an English language learner population or not. Again, English language proficiency will make up 10% of the system, and additional indicators like chronic absenteeism and the percentage of students completing advanced coursework will be 10% of the structure in both school districts that have Ls and those that don't have Ls.
Amy, did they
Yes.
talk about with the percentage of students completing advanced coursework? Is that like you pass the course?
No, just
or is
engaging
it just
in.
enrolled?
Just enrolled. And that's where the student's course schedule comes in, right? So that's how they're going to find out what you're enrolled in. It doesn't talk about achievement in those courses. It just says, are your kids accessing, and what proportion of your kids are enrolled in these more rigorous, either international baccalaureate or AP classes, or advanced level classes. But again, they were equally as sort of gray on when believe me, we had very similar questions. Because just because I'm enrolled in something October 1, right, doesn't mean I A, stay in it, or B, found success in it.
Right.
So the concern became that we might be, so it raised a lot of questions that they weren't ready to, it's a work in progress, I guess, yeah.
Okay.
But questions remain, I'll put it that way.
So Jamie, just
Yes.
another, for clarification, are you sending them then or how does that work? Are you sending them an overview of which classes our kids are taking? Or do they have
No,
actually access?
they have that data.
And
They have the data already. It's through the SCS, the student course schedule, which is a component of the SIM system.
It's been for about 3 years, 4 years now maybe, that has been a component.
Which they get from X2.
Mm-hmm. They already have that. But again, we don't know, again, this is a preview of sort of what's to come, and we don't know the procedures around which they'll access that information, and whether it be we push it into them during the data submissions, or whether it gets them a different way. We're really not sure just yet what it's going to look like.
And what is, how do they define chronic absenteeism?
That was defined earlier. That's okay.
10%. Said 10%.
That's 10. It's missing 10% of the time enrolled in the school.
Okay.
Yeah. So I thought
Sorry, it's a lot of information.
I know it, and I debated on whether just to say it's in your packet. Let me give you a quick overview, or whether to walk you through it.
Yeah.
But I thought for the sake of clarity, I'd sort of walk through it. But again, with the opening caveat as this is literally new this month, and I'm learning as much as you are too. And if there's any questions, I can always take it back and sort of find out more for you. But again, when we present our data in the fall, I will spend some time with you, like I did this year, sort of explaining sort of this is what this all means and here's where it came from, because this will be a new system. So the normative component. So again, there's normative and criteria reference. So in terms of the normative, federal law, ESSA, again, requires states to identify the lowest performing 5% of schools as needing comprehensive support intervention. And I should say that's statewide, not LEA-wide, or not district-wide. Requires states to identify schools with low-performing subgroups as needing targeted supported intervention. In terms of state law, our state law currently requires that a school must be among the lowest performing 20% of schools statewide in order to be eligible for designation as, quote, underperforming. So it's a little bit of the where the rationale for the normative component comes from, right? There is a sort of expectation in both federal and state regulation. In terms of the normative component, the accountability percentile, again, that's 1 to 99, and we usually present that annually when we give you the accountability data, calculated using all available indicators for a school. It compares schools administering similar statewide assessments, and it's used to identify the lowest performing schools in the state. It's the same calculation used at the subgroup level to identify low performing subgroups. And remember, this has been one of the ongoing concerns about the accountability system. When you get into sort of statistics and probability, when you look at the normal curve, somebody has to be the first percentile and somebody has to be the 99th. And so the schools that have traditionally been in that lowest 20% have been arguing the system set up against, like, right? They're sort of arguing it's set up against me. Like, I can't get out from under this like 10%, the 10 percentile place, right? Because the structure is the structure, and so somebody's got to be at the bottom. And so they're thoughtful about how best to hear that feedback, but also provide avenues for support. So when we get to the new structure, you'll see it's a little bit different than it currently exists. In terms of comparison, schools we grouped and compared based on the assessments administered in 2018. So in non-high schools, serving only a combination of grades 3 to 8, and administering only next generation MCAS tests in ELA and math. In middle, high, and then K-12 schools, they're going to be looking at serving grade 10 and at least one other grade at 3 to 8, and administering a combination of next generation and legacy MCAS tests in grades 3 to 8 and 10. High schools, schools in which only tested grade is grade 10, and administering only legacy MCAS tests. There will then be separate comparison categories separate comparison categories will then not be necessary once all grades tests have been transitioned to next generation MCAS. Remember, where the state we still have some choice. We made the decision to go 3 to 8, but you could have gone 4 and 5 and then 7 and 8, right? So that's where this gets a little complicated in terms of who we're going to be compared against. So we'll be compared against all other school districts giving next generation in 3 to 8, if that makes sense, right? Because we'll have some that might be still in that transition mode. Old versus new percentiles. So 2018 accountability percentiles should not be compared to school percentiles. So that goes back to your point, Cynthia, from 2012 to 2017. They're essentially being reconstructed, right? So using all those new indicators and variables and part of in the development. There'll be a different comparison, quote, universe, and that goes back to those the different indicators and the different comparison groups that you're being compared against. There'll be the inclusion of additional indicators and fewer years of data used in the calculation. So they're sort of being cautious. You can't say, I dropped 10 percentile points. You didn't. The system got reset, and you're now here. And it gives you new targets for growth from that point forward. Criterion reference component. So the rationale here is federal law under ESSA requires states to establish ambitious long-term goals and measures of interim progress. The perception is accountability determination should not depend solely on the relative success of other schools. And that goes back to my earlier point. When you only use the percentile, I'm being judged on the relative performance of my school against other schools. And so there's a concern when you just look at the normative component that you lose something in the translation, the understanding there. We also look at they're also going to be looking at resource allocation. So accountability systems built solely on a normative measure, i.e. percentile rank, may not sufficiently differentiate schools in terms of what they need for support, right? So they're thoughtful that by adding in the criterion referenced, they'll be better able to provide resource allocation and support to the school districts that need it the most. The focus is on closing the achievement gap by raising the, quote, achievement floor. So gap closing can occur as a result of a decline in performance by a high-performing subgroup, or high-performing group. So we have to be sort of thoughtful here. In addition to meeting targets for school as a whole, the performance of the lowest performing 25% of students in each school will be measured. Did you get that? So that's a little different. So the performance of the lowest performing 25% of students in each school will be measured. Every school has a lowest 25% of performance. This gets away from if you had not enough students to make a subgroup, it very well could be that some of your students weren't making the progress they should have but got lost in the aggregate. And so this is them trying to get beyond the statistics and get at who are the kids who need the help, right? And what are you doing to support them? They were identified from a cohort of students who were enrolled in the school for more than 1 year. So this also addresses the concern some of our urban colleagues had, given that the relative high rate of transiency in the districts, that they were saying, somebody just moved in October and I'm now accountable. Like, how does that make sense? So what they're saying is you have to have been enrolled in that school at least one full school year prior in order to be accounted in their lowest 25% performance, kids' performance. In terms of the cohort model, for most schools serving grades 2 to 8, the students were officially enrolled in school in the current school year for 2 consecutive years, so October 1, 2016 through October 1, 2017, as reported through SIMS. Tested in the current school year in 2017 and 18, or tested in the current school year in 2018 and in the current district in 2019, and not a first or second year English language learner in 2018. So they do have some sort of qualifiers of what makes you part of that bottom 25%. In schools where a legitimate cohort can be identified, fewer than 20 students, accountability results will be based on the performance of the, quote, all students group only. I misspoke. It's where in schools where a legitimate cohort cannot be identified. So if they have fewer than 20 in a particular grade, for example, right? So remember, it gets going by grade. So you might have really small schools with a grade of 17 kids, right? Therefore, you really can't form a subgroup because you don't have the proportion. So the accountability results will be based on the performance of the, quote, all students group only, as opposed to your lowest 25%. The year-to-year approach in high schools, the cohort model can't be used, right? Because they don't have assessment in grade 9. So we can't be looking at progress from year to year. Improvement will be measured using a year-to-year approach based on students who were officially enrolled in this current school for 2 consecutive years, October 1 through 16 to 17, tested in grade 10 in the current school year in 2018, and attended grade 9 in the same school or district in 2017. So again, they have to have been here for at least 2 years. Not a first or second year ELL, which is a good thing. We want to make sure that our Ls are given the appropriate support in order to engage in our MCAS assessments when they're really also engaged with access assessment. So if you're a first year or second year L, you're actually getting a double whammy of assessment in the spring where you're getting the access and then you have to take MCAS as well. So they're thoughtful of that and not allowing those new Ls to be included in the accountability data. In schools where a legitimate cohort cannot be identified, again, fewer than 20 kids, accountability results will be based on the performance of the all student subgroup, and the same methodology will be applied to schools ending in grade 3. So there are some like K3 schools that go up to 4 or 5 schools, and so they'll be using this, the year-to-year approach as opposed to the cohort model. Identifying the lowest performing cohort. So identified using a combined 2017 ELA and math average scaled score. The department will share each of us a secure a list in our via a secure Dropbox. For 2018 accountability reporting, the list will be shared in late March. They are not there yet. And for 2019 and beyond, lists can be shared earlier, for example, in the fall. So they're looking at they're going to share with us who they identified as our cohorts when the time comes. This just gives sort of an overview of the target set for each accountability indicator for the school as a whole and for the lowest performing 25% of kids in each school. So it looks at non-high schools and high schools, all students, lowest performing students, and then what components are calculated as a part of the accountability structure. Setting targets. So for 2018 reporting, targets will only be set for 1 year. Again, this is because of that transition to the new assessment, and we don't have multi-year data to make comparisons against. Long-term targets will be set in the future. We talked about that as well with the grade 10 cohort model, the competency determination, where we're going on sort of an interim for a couple of years. It's going to take them a couple of years to actually set the new targets, so that will come in time. Targets for achievement indicators will be based on the assessment performance of schools that have demonstrated improvement in the past. For example, the average improvement of, quote, improvers on MCAS. Targets for non-assessment indicators will be based on analysis of past trends and reasonable expectations for improvement. Now, there was as you can imagine, hands went up. What do you mean? Who says what's reasonable? So who sets the reasonable expectation for improvement? And they said more to come. We're still working that through. We heard that a lot, as you can imagine. More to come. The points assigned based on progress toward the target for each indicator for both the aggregate and lowest performing 25% of students. And here's what the points will look like. So if they went down, it'll be 0 points, no change, 1 point, improved, 2 points, met the target, 3 points, and exceed the target, 4 points. And the points make sense in a minute right here. So this is sort of what they're thinking it will look like. So if this is the sort of the calculation of the criterion reference component of the accountability system. So if we just take sort of all students here, the ELA scaled score as a 3, that means they must have met their target. Sorry, I have to go back. I'm still learning the lingo. Out of a total possible points of 4. Math scaled score, they must have improved but not met their target. They get 2 points. Science achievement, again, was a 2, which means they approved but didn't meet their target. We then have, so under achievement, a total points earned of 7 out of a total possible points of 12 for a weight, that's the 60% weight that will factor in. When we look at it, the student growth percentiles in math and ELA, you'll see a 4 and a 3, which means they exceeded the target and met the target. And then the growth total is 7. L progress was a 2, which means they improved but didn't quite meet their target. Chronic absenteeism was a 3, which meant they met their target. Sorry for flipping back and forth. I'm still learning the lingo. For the weighted total of 6.1. So combined total points would be 11.7. And the percentage of possible points would be 59%. Yes?
So are the lowest performing students also included in all students?
Yes.
So they're more than 50% of...
So, to be honest with you, I don't know. I'll find out and let you know. I don't know that came up now that you say that. I see what you mean, though. Is it a double hit?
Right.
Right, yeah. I'm not sure.
I mean, if it's everyone double hit, then I guess that's fair, but
yeah.
It seems like it's putting a lot of, which I guess is the point, right? You focus on your lowest performing students, but that does seem like it's a fairly high percentage.
That's fair, yeah.
What happens if your lowest performing students
Oh,
are
it's not
still-
50% of the kids, it's 50% weight.
No, that's what I mean.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So ask your question again. Didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, no, it's okay.
So is the weighting
I think I was
is the
misunderstanding.
weighting of
There is
the
equal
weighting-
weight between all kids. that is true. There's equal weight given to all of our kids in our lowest 20%.
Right, but the lowest are also included in the all.
That's what I don't know.
Yeah.
Sorry, I thought I got clarity, and I just didn't. Apologies.
I mean,
But
all implies that they would be,
Yeah.
so.
I believe they are now. Like when we look at all
Yeah,
the aggregate
right.
data versus the subgroups, they're included there.
Right.
So they very well may be, but I can certainly find out so I know for sure and let you know. Liza,
So
sorry.
what if your lowest performing students are, like, half of them are still making the proficient on the exam?
How low is low?
Yeah.
Well, it all goes back to their targets, right? So what I probably haven't explained well was sort of they're still going to set the targets for growth. So remember, the points are assigned based on met your target versus exceeding your target or improved or no change, but they haven't quite set what the target's going to be. Like it used to be the gap. Remember in the old system we had the gap halving mark. So if when they set the test, the kids, the percent of proficient was 60, and they wanted to get to 100, then they would take half the gap between 60 and 100 and get you to 80, and that became what we were shooting for. We don't know what we're shooting for yet, if that makes sense.
I mean, I get, focus on your lowest performing kids.
Mhm.
I understand that part of it. It's still, there's only so much after a couple of years, so much progress you can make, and so I
Right.
just hope we don't get into that.
That was the problem with No Child Left Behind, and
Right.
the assumptions that were
Yeah,
behind
assumption that you
Yeah.
make.
how we calculate it.
So then you're looking at half of your lowest performing students, and really only 10% are truly struggling. But there's still that, you still have that percentage of
So
the curves.
that came up, and I think it goes back to our MCAS conversation from the fall, where we saw a slightly different proportion of our kids being rated across the categories. And so what the state is saying is, in time, what you may find are a higher proportion of kids not meeting the expectation on the new assessment. That will particularly be true in grade. That's why they're taking such care with grade 10 rollout. We saw some modest sort of, we hit reset, right?
Yeah.
But when we hit reset, they readjusted the standards. And so, at least for the next few years, we will have a portion of kids who will be really working on to get to meeting expectations. Does that make sense? Like there's actually, when they reset the model, there's a higher proportion of kids statewide who are not meeting expectations
Right.
than they were under the old system. So their rationale was, well, we're better capturing those kids on a more well-rounded, solid assessment that's actually capturing progress toward the standard. And then we have a new system that now holds you more accountable, regardless of subgroups, but sort of you look at your lowest performing kids, period, and sort of get them to move. And that's the
And
focus.
so parents, keep your kids in school so that they're not the lowest
That's right. We
achieving,
don't want to
and
have
we're not
any.
getting dinged for the absenteeism.
Correct. Exactly. So this is I won't go through this all again, but this is another model example of the criterion reference system. This time looking at high schools. So you'll see the addition down here of the advanced coursework completion, 3 and 4, chronic absenteeism, annual dropout rate, which is new. The growth, the 4-year cohort, extended engagement, and annual dropout are high school specific, which is why they have a slightly different structure. Categorization of schools. So schools will no longer be placed in a vertical hierarchy of 1 through 5. The number of schools that will be placed into a category based upon a relative standing will be cut in half from the previous system. So approximately 90% of schools could be categorized based on their own performance against their targets and not against the relative performance of other school districts. See, this is the change they're trying to make in the system. Most schools will have 50% of its own categorization based on students that have been in the school for the last 2 years. Category labels are primarily tied to the level of required assistance or intervention that the school district needs. And there'll be a stronger emphasis on schools commended for success, which under the current model, it feels like it's always, here are our lowest performing schools. They really want to try to celebrate schools doing excellent things, which they feel like they don't do enough of, right? Now they don't know what these titles will be called. These are just sort of highlight categories for discussion, but they're looking at approximately 85% of school districts in Massachusetts won't require any assistance or intervention from the state. Right?
Defined
How
as
does
money.
that compare?
What's that?
Defined mainly as money?
Yeah, and resources of their regional assistance centers and their sort of data teams. And there's the DSACs, which are the regional state accountability and assistance centers, which have sort of technical assistance people who will go out and train you on, walk through protocols or sort of school improvement strategies to help our lowest performing schools.
And is
Yeah.
that percentage, again, equalized? Is that sort of what it is now? 85%?
No, they're talking about when we get to 20, if we look at all the school districts come next fall, about 85% will require no support or assistance, which is roughly what it is now,
Yeah,
to
that's
be
what I was
fair.
asking.
Yeah,
Okay.
roughly.
They'll get the
Okay.
accommodations and the.
Right.
Well, not
Feel good.
necessarily. You got to be a school of recognition to get that.
Well, right.
This is what I mean. So if you look at the line here, so this is the divider line right here. So 85% will be over here. Oh no, they won't. Sorry, so they'll be right. 85% will be right in here. So meeting targets, partially meeting targets, and not meeting targets. Schools requiring assistance intervention will be focused or targeted support, and broad comprehensive support. And then we'll have on the far left schools of, quote, recognition, which are schools demonstrating high achievement, significant improvement, or high growth. We said, well, wait a minute, how would a school not meeting target not need assistance or intervention? And they said, well, maybe they, so where this gets complicated is we don't know what they're going to call any of this. They're just talking about the general categories of schools. So they know that about 85%, and they sort of explain that they're saying overall 85% won't need any support. About 15% will, but we don't know where those will fall on this continuum of support, if that makes sense, right? So now we've got schools of recognition that will become high achievement, significant improvement, high growth. Then we'll have schools that are meeting their targets with criterion reference target percentages between 75 and 100. Partially meeting targets with scores between 50 and 74, and then not meeting targets between 0 and 49. But they don't know yet whether, like, not meeting target, whether, or, like, I don't know, they don't know what proportion of that 85 will fall across these four categories, if that makes sense. They're hypothesizing it'll be roughly 85, but they haven't run the system yet to know where school districts fall across that continuum. So this slide's a little confusing, I apologize. Again, the notes in the bottom, category names are not finalized, and school percentiles and performance against targets will be reported for all schools. So I apologize if there's any gray here, but it's a work in progress and more to come. But we do know, as they're saying, about 85%, right, will be okay, and they'll be categorized into one of these categories, but we don't know what those final labels will be called.
Sorry, I'm
Yeah.
being a pain here.
That's
But
okay.
That's the first sort of reference that I've seen to subgroups in the focused target support. So how do subgroups factor in general? I mean, they're talking about, the lowest performing percentage versus all students. But until now, nobody's talked about subgroups.
To be honest, I don't know. My understanding was subgroups are done. We're looking at the bottom 20%. Or 25% rather. So I will clarify that, because you're right. I didn't notice that either. I'm just seeing that. I mean, I looked at it obviously, but I didn't make the connection. I don't know,
Okay.
honestly. One of the things they were talking to us about is the subgroups are gone. There was a lot of trouble with those subgroups because we didn't. I won't get in. I'll be here all night.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
what they're trying to do is take the emphasis on what's your label, what's your category, who are your bottom, like who are the lowest performing 25% of kids, and what's their progress look like?
Right.
That's where the focus is going to be. So I think their subgroup may be the lowest 20%. I'm not sure that, I don't know that they're using the subgroup there in the same
Oh, it could be the
connotation
same
that we've used it
context, right.
historically,
Different
to make
context,
sense.
right. Okay.
But honestly, I don't know. It also could be the L group, the English language group. It'll be its own category, but that they could be considering that a subgroup against the aggregate, right? So I don't know that it's the same traditional categories.
What is the percentage that the state consider putting the school under receivership? Do you know?
They have to be level 5.
Okay.
To have a
Chronically, too.
I mean, for years I mean, it's rare. I mean, it's happened, but it's not common practice. Really chronically underperforming for a number of years. Do you know any more about the receiverships? I mean, it's when the Board of Education takes over, the commissioner, right, appoints a receiver. It's rare. It happens, right? Lawrence is under receivership. There was this one, Springfield, was it?
Southbridge.
Southbridge.
Chicopee, I believe.
I'm not sure. It's rare. But in order to get down, I don't know.
So that wouldn't be under the 50.
I don't know the connection between that and this new system.
Okay.
So talking about our lowest performing schools, category 4 and 5, so current level 4 and 5 schools will be classified as underperforming or chronically underperforming until an exit decision is made by the commissioner. So there was some questions from level 4 and 5 districts there. Clarity to come based on the new commissioner coming on board. Schools ending in grade 3 will be classified based on criterion reference components only, because again, they don't have the student growth because they end at grade 3. They don't have the growth and therefore no accountability percentile. Schools with no tested grades will be classified as, quote, insufficient data, and schools with low assessment participation below 95% will be classified as needing focused, targeted support. So participation rate could actually change your entire accountability status if we drop below the 95% expectation, and that is a federal requirement. 95% of our kids participate in MCAS. If you don't, we could be considered chronically underperforming or have get a different accountability rating because we're not meeting the performance expectation. Schools with the low assessment we classify as needing focused support by subgroup and by subject, and using a 2-year participation rate average. So that's the one benefit, is if there's a 1-year dip, they're actually using a 2-year average to sort of calculate that. Categorization of schools. So here's an example of a non-high school number 1. Accountability percentile was 16. So again, that's the normative data. They performed as well or better than 16% of schools in the same configuration across the state. Their criterion reference target percentage is 51%, and that goes back to that calculation with those points assigned, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Participation rate was was greater than 95%. Sorry, I always have to draw the Pac-Man to figure out which way it's going. And then the lowest performing subgroups that was achieved to 0. So the accountability determination was partially meeting targets. Versus another school, non-high school number 2, with an accountability percentile of 31. A criterion reference percentile of 66, participation rate being greater than 95, and then the low performing subgroup, 1 low performing subgroup for their accountability determination being focused or targeted support.
Subgroup again.
There's that word, subgroup again, I know. And it just runs through a series of examples. I'm getting there, I promise, sorry. Categorization of districts. Districts will be classified based on the performance of the district as a whole, so we no longer are categorized based on the performance of our lowest performing school, which I think gives a more accurate representation, particularly across the state with our middle schools, really being across the state sort of the area that was the level 2 for most districts who are level 2. District accountability percentiles would not be calculated. Classified based on criterion reference component, adjustments made for low graduation rates and low assessment participation rates. The board may decide a district as underperforming or chronically underperforming. So that goes back to your question earlier, Carlos. The board actually makes the determination that you're chronic or underperforming. The meeting targets partially meeting, this is the same slide again, relative to categorization. Reporting, accountability reports were published for each school and district in the fall of 2018. The reports will include the overall classification, including the reasons for classification, criterion reference, target percentage, accountability percentile, data related to performance on each accountability indicator for each subgroup, meaning the minimum group size, and then all the 20,
There are some.
so, well,
Yeah.
Of
yeah.
26.
See, they just told us, all right.
Well,
They could not, they may not be factoring into accountability, but they may be reported on.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Makes
Because they were
sense.
very clear that in accountability, it was the bottom 25, the lowest performing 20% of kids, regardless of subgroup membership, right? So that whole idea of the subgroups coming into accountability, they may still report to us. I mean, we're still going to get data on how well our students with disabilities are doing,
Right.
but they're not necessarily going to factor into accountability, if that makes sense. School and district report cards. ESE will publish redesigned district and school report cards in late fall 2018 for release sometime thereafter. Will include measures of performance or opportunity beyond assessment and accountability results, including discipline, availability of art education, educator data, grade 9 course passing, and per pupil expenditures. Will also be reported on the new report cards. Thank you. After you drop the per pupil bond, right, and you get to walk off stage left. What I will say is that is the email and the phone number for the office. They were very responsive. I'm just the messenger.
Not your number.
No, it's not mine. But I will say more to come, and I know it was a little dry and dense, and I'm sure we'll be talking about it again. But at least it gives you some sense of what's to come, and I promise to be back with a greater level of proficiency on this content prior to the next presentation in the fall.
Thank
But we
you.
felt
That's
that
fine.
Thank
the
you.
accountability report itself is so dense
Yeah.
that to think at the same time you could hear this and then see what the result is challenging.
It hurts.
Yeah.
My brain is
All right,
melted.
we're gonna keep moving. 6.5, to receive notification of the overnight field trip of high school students to the Galapagos Islands, Ecuador, on April 13th to 19th, 2019. So, next year, Spanish students and scientists get a chance to go to the Galapagos Island. 6.6, to receive notification of the overnight field trip of high school students to New York City on April 6th to 8th. So that's next month.
Liza, just a quick question about these.
Yeah.
First of all, I noticed there are two different forms. Is there a standard form, or is, I'm just curious. And then it says approved by the Hingham School Committee if applicable. When does the school committee approve field trips? And I was just curious why. I just wanted some more background. I'm sure this was explained to me before and I've just forgotten. Does the school committee approve field trips or no?
No.
Okay, so this is just for our information that it's in the packet.
For your information and questions. If you had questions about it, I would be intending to approve both of these, but if you had a question, I would say I'll go back and find out about that, because I'm not interested in approving of something that, you have major concerns about.
I have no concerns. I'm actually very supportive of field
Yeah.
trips. I think they're very educational and great for the kids, but I just wanted to understand the form, and then I noticed that there were two different forms, and I didn't remember approving them in the past.
Which one says?
Well, on the one it says
Oh.
revised 313, and then
Yeah, it does have a signature on it for Hingham School
if you
Committee,
look, and it
but
has
if
the-
applicable, yeah.
And then the other one's revised 22613. So I was just curious about that.
Usually, Ed, you're usually the one that catches those things.
He's still thinking MCAS.
I don't know why there are two different forms, but I will tell you that these forms, even though they're different, are a significant improvement as to what
Well, they're
the
tight.
question that I raised on that topic several years ago.
Yeah.
These forms were the bane of his existence, what the
Well, safety of travel was the issue. I don't know why I don't know why they're
question.
using two different forms.
What,
Probably not
Do you know
something
why
we need to
they-
talk
They're just
about
two different
tonight.
templates.
And I just saw that.
That's
it was-
okay, just check.
I was just.
not sure what is different about them. Have to look at the paper.
One's
to do
revised
this
2/26,
Yeah,
and
we
the other
don't,
says
I
March
don't,
13th.
I mean, it's 10:30, I don't think
Yeah.
we need to talk about it.
No, I don't want to continue.
Good point, though.
Get back to,
Well-
we can,
Yeah.
Doc
We have
can
to
get
do
back to
our-
us on that.
our
You can read
security
it,
thing.
it's typed, it's signed.
Yeah.
Check.
My daughter wants to go on this trip, so.
I
All
understand
right.
that's different than
Yeah,
this.
it's, good for you, good for you.
Let's come back with a revised one, with the date May, and you're
I think
set.
it's the same information.
Are they that
Yeah.
different? We'll find out for you.
Okay. Thank
The
you.
only thing I can think
They
of
look the
that
same.
is different is when we designed these, they were forms that were not fillable kinds of
Yeah.
forms, and over the years,
Somebody's got an old
people have
word
wanted a
processor.
form that they could type into, especially since Dr. Schreier put a lot of emphasis on that typing part. So, that may have been the reason for a change. They were just generic forms, and they were not fillable forms a while ago. So the changes could have happened then, but,
All right. 6.7, to receive notification of the appointments of several staff. 6.8, to receive notification of retirement of the Foster School custodian, William Canale. And other items that may not reasonably known 48 hours in advance of the meeting. We have one item, and that is our next meeting is due to be on Tuesday, April 10th. And Ed had requested.
Our next meeting, I think, which is scheduled April 10th, because you all, I asked way back when, if we could move the meeting from the 9th, which was what the administration proposed, to Tuesday the 10th. And very honestly, the reason for that was I was going to miss my annual meeting because I was going to be away, but in point of fact, I had to cancel that trip. So in fact, if it would be more convenient for everyone to go back to the usual Monday, which would be Monday the 9th, I want to, truth in lending, I want to tell you that I'm not going away on the 10th.
And,
So it might be more convenient for you all to stay on the Monday night, that's all. Say again?
Are you gonna be there?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
and it would help the administration with some scheduling if we moved it to
Yeah,
the
that was-
9th.
that came up.
So, if
Yeah, but people may have made other.
everyone
no,
is,
Okay.
yeah.
Didn't
just
make any
wanted-
Just a
exciting
thought.
plans for that Monday night.
And I still may tentatively just hold aside the 10th, just in case there's an event that evening that you might want to engage in
Yes.
with us, but I know it'll come more in the future. But we're trying to find a date for the Director of Student Services internal site visit where the candidates will come on site. And trying to find a day where we can do the tours and then have an afternoon, evening where people can come in and meet them is getting trickier and trickier with the timeline we have. But the 10th, we'll check calendars, we'll know early next week, but I might just keep it aside.
Yeah, so keep it on your calendar, but we'll do the meeting on the 9th
Yeah.
instead of the 10th. So, okay, that was all we had for 48 hours. Thank you for accommodating that. And subcommittee and project reports. Does anybody?
Policy met, and we are talking about the SBIRT opioid screening policy. So we're hopefully gonna have a draft for all of you for a first reading on the 9th.
Oh, okay.
Hopefully.
Well, we will schedule a long-range planning, and John mentioned that earlier. I was talking with a friend over the weekend, and, a lot of effort has gone into the budget, and it seems that some thank yous are in order. Thank yous to a lot of people, certainly the central office, the administration, and the staff, our friends on the EdCom Educational Subcommittee, as well as the help from the full advisory committee. Support of the selectmen, and a thank you to the capital outlay subcommittee for their attention. And as we proceed to town meeting, a thank to the town's taxpayers for their continued support.
Second.
You're very nice.
I will go quick with sped because then I know that Kay has some other stuff with the community outreach. In the special ed subcommittee met right before this to approve minutes that had been waited for a while, and got an update on the middle school evaluation, and that's moving ahead. Had some delays because of the snow days, but BU is making progress on that. And the most recent collaborative work plan is in your packet for the projects that had been worked on by the administration and with CPAC input as well. So wanted you to be aware of that. And Kay, you have
So,
update
yes,
on
our
community
survey is, I think, complete, and we've made changes to it. It's the survey regarding our website, communication, digital presence. We want to put it up on the website, but the question is, how do we want to communicate that it's there? And instead of making another community outreach meeting, I thought we can just quickly discuss that tonight. Dot, I don't know if you want to send out an email via Aspen to reach out to all parents and let them know that the survey is live. And the other question would be, how do we want to reach out to maybe non-parents, because we want the feedback from the community as well. I don't know if we can put something in the Hingham Journal to let people know.
I was looking for a topic for the second Education Matters thing, and it would seem that that might be a topic for me to do an article on that, indicating the survey is available and why and all that kind of thing. Because that is something, we're looking to reach out to significant groups in our town, I would say, given our demographic, that seniors are a significant group, and that's also a group that rely on not so much technology to hear their news, but print media, particularly the local paper. So that might be one way. We could certainly post things in the public library. I'm thinking about how we got 40 people here to the substitute seminar, and that's what we did. We posted paper copies in the public library, and
put on Facebook,
town hall, different places. So a paper posting and an article might be the best way.
So,
but if I were to do an article, what I would want from you on the committee, just some suggestions as, think about the big picture. Why are we doing this? Because I don't want to write an article, it's just an announcement, really. But rather, this is what we're trying to achieve, and some of that I can glean from minutes, but things like that tend to be more around conversations that we've had about as part of the subcommittee meetings. So
well,
I can't think of another way that we could.
It'd be good to have that then in about next week. I think it's too late for this week.
It would go in. Tuesday is their deadline, so we want to certainly get it out there before the school vacation week.
So do you want to meet before that deadline? We don't have currently another community outreach meeting planned.
No, we don't.
And then when would the email go out, and when do we want to have feedback by?
Right.
So those are some questions that we still kind of need to answer. And I don't want to delay it any more than we have.
Okay.
So I mean, we can post it to the website and put it on Facebook like tomorrow. It's just, I think the messaging around what it is and how we explain it is what.
And do we wanna
thoughts
have a
talking
deadline?
about
That's
trying
the
to
part that the
articulate, right?
rest of the community that
Right.
we're trying to get at.
Can we ask
and-
Stacker, do
So-
you wanna have a deadline?
I can ask them.
Yeah. 'Cause they
How long
probably
do we
have
wanna keep
feedback.
it up there, but it's gonna take a week to get it in the journal.
Well, we can
And
get
we can
it
do our
out.
Well,
outreach
it
now.
do- it doesn't
Anyway,
really
yeah.
all have to go up at the same time, as long as we have it open a long enough window. Because we will have it, it's important for us to have it open for the school community before the February vacation. That's not so important if you're looking at the other, community perspective, non-parents. So we could, get it in the following week's journal, not this Tuesday coming. And that would allow time to have a meeting, brief meeting
Mhm.
about,
So do you wanna do that?
and then just make sure that it's open on the other end of vacation for, the parent population. I think we had envisioned it being open for a while anyway. So then it would be open for next week, the vacation week, the following week, at a minimum 3 weeks. But that would give 2 weeks to the non-parent.
Why don't we just try to meet next week and
All right, so I'll send them.
take it from there,
Okay, so we do need another meeting
apparently.
on this. All right,
Or-
but could you,
I could,
I mean, we
the
could
other
just-
thing we could do is I could do a draft and get
just
it
Review it.
to you by the end of this week, and then you can give me some suggestions. Because this is not, something that has to be voted. You're giving me feedback about something I'm going to do. So if I were to write, the description of why we're doing this,
Sounds good.
you can give me feedback on what I would write.
okay,
sounds
and we can
better.
put
I mean,
it
the
up on the
committee-
website tomorrow?
Excuse me?
Yeah.
Yeah, and, does Joe do that?
Oh,
Who-
but wait,
who
do we
puts it
wanna
up?
put up something without an explanation? Don't we wanna have
I mean,
like a,
Can I interject? I feel like we might be overthinking this a little bit. Like we did the survey to get feedback from the community
Right.
about our methods of communication. And I think if we leave it there, the survey
Speak for
is
itself.
self-explanatory. I mean, it's not. We've been working so long to get this out.
So
It's
Jamie
just
and I
another
will
week to
collaborate
like,
on
you know what I mean? Like I
on
just
the
think
article.
it's like we're losing time now.
Right.
Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Right.
And like, if we want action on this, like we gotta.
Yeah.
I think the Dot's message to the community, right? Like that in the journal that may not be a school community member. I think that's where the messaging. But in terms of our posting to our internal people through X2 or Facebook posting or our website post, it can be pretty. I mean, the opening paragraph of the survey explains what we're doing.
it does,
Right,
but
I
I
mean,
guess my point is you don't want to just put a link, so at least copy the opening paragraph.
Oh
of the
yeah. Oh
survey
no.
and
It'll
stick it in
be
there,
yeah. Oh no. Yeah. No, we can do
You can't
that.
just say, here, click here.
I think the point that Dot was making around the messaging was like the people beyond our
Yeah.
our school community. As it goes out to the bigger Hingham community, it needs a little bit of context. But I think if we talked about sort of the committee and the administration wanting to find out more feedback from our community relative to our communication strategies and sort of opportunities and as well as the way people want information, I think that's pretty straightforward, right? But I'd also don't want to underestimate the complexity of it either, right? I'm just thinking another meeting next week to talk about something that we could
Yeah.
pull together for you and get it out there.
all right.
Yep, sounds good.
Liza, just one thing.
Yeah,
As your liaison to the legislators,
yeah.
on behalf of the Mass Association of School Committees,
Mhm.
I'd like to just invite you to the Day on the Hill on April 25th. This is a great event. I went last year, and it's very informative. Since we have election this year, the 3 candidates running, but perhaps all of them will be there.
Mm.
So if you
Just
want to
decide.
attend, you probably already received this information, so
Tonight.
I'll be there.
Great,
Thank you.
good.
Kate, did you want to mention the
Community outreach PTO meetings that were
Wait.
Attending, or did you already mention that at the last
I
one?
haven't. You attended one, right? Or two now?
Yes.
So yeah, we are visiting the PTOs. But Michelle's been to two. I have mine in April at South.
In East in a few weeks.
Can
Before
you
town
email
meeting.
everybody the list, the dates?
The dates?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
That'd be good.
So we're going to the meetings just to encourage attendance at town meetings and to explain 3 items that the school committee would
Right.
like support for, the budget, the warrant article, and the marijuana ban.
Yeah. Oh, speaking of the warrant article, do we need to do be prepared with a PowerPoint of the?
The 60,000?
Yeah. Or do you think it'll speak for itself?
I think it's not that much. I think
Okay.
it will sort of speak for itself, just point at the. that
We don't need a PowerPoint, we'll have live demonstration.
Yes. Okay, good.
Everyone look up.
Okay. Okay, last thing on our agenda is to adjourn to executive session, not to return to open session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, purpose number 4, for, to update the school committee on security measures. So, well, that's the motion. Can I have a second?
Second.
Aye.
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 Aye. Okay, thank you. We're adjourned to executive session.
Bring us.